Just a few seconds more. Let this count down. And that looks good. Everything looks good. Okay, the meeting is yours, Mr. Scott. Let me know if you need anything.
Thank you, Mr. Wilborn. I appreciate it greatly. Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, September 29th, 2026 p.m. Special meeting with the Township Board of Trustees. Obviously, the format is predominantly budget related, but we do have a couple of items here. Calling the meeting to order. Just as a reminder to anybody out there, this is an electronic digital meeting. We are coming to you as in a Zoom format, utilizing Merge Live as our moderator. We do have a couple of amendments since we have employees that have been moving from meeting to meeting to meeting, things of that nature. We're going to move the Commerce Memorial Fence discussion down the list when Mr. Campbell makes it to his destination from the prior meeting. We'll do that. I do have an amendment to the agenda briefly, adding item number 6. It is a resolution resolving People's Express. It is a CARES Act reimbursable that the county has advised us of, and SMART has advised us of, for a way to get our SMART credit funding. So in a discussion, we'll add that as item 6. Item number 7, I would like to add is a brief discussion regarding Aquatic Lake Services, SAD, Lower Straits Lake. Not to make decisions on, but we need to engage a conversation to give us some direction from this side in total. So we'll do a Lower Straits Lake Preservation Committee SAD discussion as item number 7. And I think that is the only 2 amendments. If I'm wrong, please, Melissa or Molly, shout. I think that's good though.
That covers me.
Okay. With that, just as a reminder, obviously for those watching on YouTube after today's meeting or live, you do have the ability to call in, listen in, watch us. Myself, David Scott, Township Supervisor. Molly Phillips is the Township Treasurer. Melissa Creech is our Township Clerk. Our trustees, Vanessa Magner, Rick Sobel, George Weber, and Bob Burkheiser. And the other people on the screen, you may be seeing our department heads from Info Technology with Ben Sabrowski, Fire Chief Jim Dundas, Mark Schroeder, Maintenance, etc. As we go through the evening, some will come on the screen, others will drop off. With that, I would make sure I'm doing it right. Yep, we'll call the meeting to order with public comments being item number 1. If you are out there in the public, you would like to make a public comment. Again, this is not a discussion. It's not a question and answer, but we are always eager to hear what you have to say. And often a trustee or full-time board member, if not department head, will seize that topic and run with it, come back with a conversation. If you are so inclined, if you could touch *9 to let Mr. Milborn know that you're raising your hand and you would like to be in the public comment section, please do so now. And Mr. Milborn will take it.
Thank you, Mr.
I have somebody raising their hand. Ken, do you see it?
Yep, I see them. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Again, to the callers that are on the line, if you would like to speak, please press *9 on your keypad. We do have a caller that would like to speak. Caller with the last 4 digits, 6150. I will ask you to unmute your line by pressing *6. Please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, this is Bruce Jakeways. My address is 1841 Lorraine. And I'm just wondering if, since like Wonderland Mall, Wonderland Bowling Alley, and the movie theater finally been allowed to do business, will the Board of Trustees be giving them a break on their taxes since they've been out of business for 6 months? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? If you have a public comment you'd like to chime in, please do a *9.
We have another caller, Mr. Scott, the caller with the last four digits of 0054. Please press *6 to unmute your line. And again, please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
Mike Miller, 5320 Bridge Trail West, Commerce Township, Michigan. On behalf of the Miller family, we want to thank you for looking at the fencing at the south end of the cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Are there any other people who would like to chime in on public comments?
Seeing no other virtual hands raised at this time, Mr. Scott.
Okay. We'll monitor throughout the evening. I know that we have had some people who are learning the process and we're not able to make comments. So if for some reason you see one chime in, again, it would only be for a statement, not a question and answer. With that, moving on to item number 2, resolution waiving the property transfer affidavit penalty for parcel number 17-33-106-293. And we have all seen these previously. We know that the facts and circumstances, but we'll let Ms. Phillips, our treasurer.
Does anybody have any questions on what's presented in the paperwork I sent? No? Everybody,
No.
Okay. So I would make a motion that we pass the resolution to waive the penalty for property transfer affidavit filing on that parcel.
Second.
Thank you both.
Question.
Go ahead, Bob.
So Molly, I guess number one has to, let me just ask the one having to do with this first. So I'm confused between the purchase and then the quick deed transfer. It seems like it wasn't filed, when they made the purchase, it seems like it should have been filed at that time. And then there's a quick deed that should have been filed again. So I'm trying to figure out, why we're waiving this.
Okay, well, they have 45 days from the purchase to file their property transfer affidavit. And he knew he was going to transfer it to his business, but he had to get his business paperwork in order and file all the paperwork to do that before he could transfer it to the business. So he came in to file both transfer affidavits at the same time. And in talking to whomever he talked to at the assessors, whether it was Cheryl or Tammy, they didn't understand that it was a two-part transaction, and they only asked him to fill out the one transfer affidavit.
So in this case, it should have filed both, correct?
He should have filed both, but he wasn't sure what to do. He asked them for guidance.
Okay.
And they didn't have him do two of them. He was still within the 45-day window on the first sale.
Yeah, but to me, it seemed like that it was due to not filing one. So I didn't realize that it had to do with our mistake. The next one is more in general. Why are we all of a sudden seeing so many of these? I mean, we've gone 8 years with approving 2 of them, and now all of a sudden in the last few months, seems like we have at least one a month that we're doing. Is there,
Well,
I don't know the right word, but
they only come out on the summer property tax bill. And I think there were a lot of them that got caught more because Oakland County was doing things remotely and they had access to, paper documents online that otherwise, maybe they didn't get to all of them. I don't know. The total dollar amount we're set to collect on these for the year is about the same as it's always been. I just think there were some extenuating circumstances with, offices being closed, and a couple of them were truly title errors, and one of them was somebody, they actually filed a Scrivener's error with the court because they put the wrong date of the transfer on. They backed it up by a year. So I think it's just a screwy year all around.
And Molly,
Yes.
unless I missed something, the heading on this one, we've got the wrong date and time. It's got the 20th at 7 o'clock instead of the 29th at 6 o'clock.
So I didn't even notice that. Thank you. Should I authorize it with the change to the correct date and time? make my motion to have it be the correct date and time?
Yes.
So noted,
Okay,
and supported by your second, so noted with the time. Thank you, Mr. Sobel, for catching that. With that, a motion by Phillips, supported by Weber, roll call vote.
Phillips,
aye,
Weber,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Burkheiser,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Scott.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Noting that all department heads have arrived and they're all in their positions on the Zoom format here, we'll move on to item number 3, the Commerce Memorial Fence. Mr. Campbell, thank you for jetting across the world to hit everything you had to do and be here to assist us with this.
So I will start off on this, and then
Go ahead,
I will use Dave's programs to help identify the discussion. So over the last 2 weeks, I've spent several days and evenings over at the Benstein Grill. So I went on a Thursday, I went on a Friday, I went on a Saturday, just to see what the traffic was looking like and what the noise issues were. And as you can imagine, it's not very busy there right now. So it's a slow season. They have completed virtually all of their expansion, including the patio. The only thing they're waiting for is having the awning installed for them to open that up. But while I was there, I did note that the just general parking lot noise, even with a mostly empty parking lot, was carried well into the cemetery. And as a result of that, I went back and looked at what we had previously approved, and I'm looking to add to that approval. Basically, from the west end of the parking lot where the bike path is, up into the chain link fence that's in existence, I'm proposing that we put in a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence and then put our arborvitaes in front of that. There is an additional cost to what we had talked about. And Dave, if you could bring up the map, just so everybody can see the area that I'm speaking to make sure we're all on the same page here. So it's previously we had talked about adding roughly 125 feet to almost where Dave's cursor is, to where the chain link fence starts at to the far east end of his line. What I'm proposing is that basically where he has the blue line, that we create that line being a 6-foot privacy fence, putting our arborvitaes in front of it. And then from the rest of that area, we would contemplate putting at a future time, the wrought iron fence all the way to Benstein Grill. And Dave Scott, I know that's something you've talked about in terms of all of our cemeteries having the appropriate fencing to earmark our property versus neighboring properties. So the difference here is the noise barrier. And I know we've had some discussions on over a period of time, the arborvitaes will act as that. And to be honest, I disagree with that. I don't think that the arborvitaes are going to block any natural or ongoing parking lot noise, particularly on weekends and early evenings when people are getting in and out of their cars. People are having normal conversations, laughing and joking, all while there's potentially activity going on in the cemetery. So the cost associated with doing this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave Campbell, but it's going to add about $6,000 to what we had previously approved.
I might have to do some math, double check that figure, Mr. Weber. So we priced out a privacy fence panel at $200 a panel, with a panel being 8 feet long. So you're adding, where did I find it? You're adding about 100 more feet. If you want, let me do some math and make sure that that figure sounds right.
Okay, I can get my calculator out here as well. But as we're, maybe Dave, if you're going to do a quick calculation there, maybe I'll open it up to any other comments or questions from the board before moving forward with the motion.
George,
So, George,
what you're doing is you think there should be a privacy fence from, if you will, the woodlet to the west of the Benstein parking lot, all the way to and into the curve of the bike path.
Yes, essentially where the bike path heads off towards the to the southwest is where the privacy fence would end.
Okay.
So
And I'm sorry, but then a 4-foot fence would continue out to Benstein Road.
correct.
That's included in the increase.
No, I don't think we haven't actually discussed that, Missy. I don't think that's been a discussion of any of this. But I think going forward, I think not just fencing for the Benstein Grill, but I think utilizing, and I'm going to go back to the discussion we had 2 weeks ago, utilizing the sums of money that we have in the cemetery fund to putting a fencing strategy within all of our cemeteries and having agreement. And I think that in that meeting, we discussed prioritizing the fencing over the paving of this particular cemetery, at least at this time.
So from a discussion standpoint, I guess I would ask that we were to proceed with our fence and plantings as we had decided, and then give us the opportunity to adapt and add to plantings as needed. And then if there comes a point in time where we decided, no, we want to take a 4-foot fence and replace it with a paneled privacy fence, we then could transfer that fencing to one of the other cemeteries, and it would not go to waste. It's a, if you will, a Lego set of fencing. It bolts together. And I think we're, if you will, reacting to an emotion or worry that a site that is essentially opens at dawn and closes at dusk, going into the evening, the cemetery should be closed to patrons or participation. And what happens in the restaurant or the daycare next door should have no effect on it at all. But I'll let the rest of the board, I just believe that we've made a motion to move forward to fence and to plant arborvitae. Before we know, is that anywhere near sufficient? Maybe we should follow through and then add on, but please carry on the conversation.
So is our maintenance department installing this?
It would be.
Yeah. So it would be double install then, Dave. You would have, if we were to do that, it would be double the labor.
If we need it, and anything our maintenance department does, they're going to install the fence and the plants. And then if we need it changed, of course, it would be them, not a fencing company we would be hiring to make the disassembly and new install. Mm-hmm. I believe the panel lengths and everything are relatively uniform. So it's not like we're going to have to displace poles or foundations, if you will.
Well, there's I guess I would disagree. There is, the poles are going to be different for a 4-foot fence than they would be for a 6-foot fence. Yes, you could go from 6 foot to 4 foot without too much trouble with a saw, but going the other way, I think would cause an issue. And I'm not, and just to be clear, Dave, I know you mentioned this isn't just due to the Millers, but I think this is due to everybody that is in that area. And I know that we've had, almost all the members of the board have had discussions that while this was still the right decision to do this to help the local business, our execution on this could have been better. And there were some surprises that we didn't know that were going to happen regarding the vitality of some of the trees that we thought were going to be the buffer. That turns out was not the case. But from a respect standpoint for everybody who's in that cemetery right now, it is noisy, and it's only going to get noisier as the restaurants become more populated and open up. So this is something I think is the right thing to do, and the cost is not exorbitant to do it now.
Dave, do you have a chance to do the math or come up with any better number?
If I heard Mr. Weber say earlier that it's about a $6,000 difference from the $10,000 that the board already approved at the last meeting, I would say that looks right to me.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board input?
So I will make a motion.
Before you do, George, could I ask, who made the motion and supported the motion for the last action? It might be appropriate to ask if they'd like to change if we know, or if you remember.
It was Bob and you. You're talking about the last meeting?
Yeah, I thought that's what it was, but I just wanted, typically we would turn to board members and say, do you want to amend your motion or do you want to live by it before we make a motion to change an action? I
guess my question is, are we putting additional fence in? So are we running the 4-foot wrought iron? I'll say the intent is the whole length. And then we're also putting in a sound barrier with a 6-foot fence. Is that what you're proposing, George?
No.
Or are we just putting the 6-foot fence and then wherever it ends, we'll continue with the iron or the whatever we were doing before?
So this motion is to put in the 6-foot privacy fence. And then as we develop the strategy for the fencing for the entire cemetery, which I think the discussion has been wrought iron, that we would extend it from that point to Benstein Road.
You know, we've got different fencing throughout all our cemeteries. Mm-hmm. So we've got houses, specific ones that comes to mind is over on Commerce Road there on the south side. There's multiple different fences. It's whatever the neighbors put up. Obviously our fence, I believe, is falling apart, chain link type stuff, and which is probably why they put their own privacy fence up. I honestly, Dave, don't have trouble. I think to some extent we could have executed better, as George said, and we probably should have designed it a little better with Benstein moving the running path and everything, probably more so toward their side. But I think if this is going to help and put in a nice fence and it'll be there, I'm okay with it. I know you're probably not, but I'm okay.
I guess I would disagree in the sense that I believe that if we're going to make an amendment, I have no problem supporting that to do so, but it should be for the full length of the area. It shouldn't be just for a section where, if you will, you can walk past that point and then walk into the cemetery, ride a bike into the cemetery. My goal was to protect the cemetery in total from the bike path. So I would like to see that continued. I would not like to see us abbreviate and just put up a sound barrier in a portion and hope to revisit it. I'd like to get it.
Dave Campbell, can you pull the map back up, and can you show us the using your program to show us what the length is from where the privacy fence would end to Benstein Road? and how many feet that is?
I was gonna ask.
Yes, I can. Just bear with me one more second.
I understand if you have to go to near map and open up a new map, David, no problem there, but
All right, so is everybody seeing the aerial now?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this length, which is I think what Mr. Weber is proposing for the privacy fence, is 260 feet. So if I get rid of that for the moment, tell me what we want to measure.
So
Where that ended out to Benstein Road?
Yes.
Benstein to the woods.
So we were saying we ended it about there. I need to move this over a little bit to give myself room. So the right of way is right about there. That's where the existing fence ends.
Right.
So that's another 225 feet.
How much are the wrought iron panels?
How much do they cost?
Yeah.
I need to go to, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I need to go to the email where I provided that information. The wrought iron panels, which were 4 feet tall by 8 feet wide, when you include the post and the hardware, were $97. Call it $100.
So that would be an additional $2,800. So if I took your 2 1/4 divided by 8 times your $97, that's an additional $2,800.
So for the sake of discussion, I would amend the original motion, or Bob and I would amend the original motion and say do the privacy fence for the full length. And potentially we won't need the arborvitae if you have a 6-foot fence. If Bob would support or amend or come to something.
I'm okay with that.
So just so I'm clear, Dave, you're saying take the privacy fence all the way to Benstein Road, or
protect all the grave sites from the sound and everything that's going to come from Benstein Grill and the daycare to the south of it, so that fence line is completely uniform and all patrons of the cemetery are protected equally.
That math's different than what Dave just came up with then.
That math would be different.
No, it's an additional.
So I'm just curious. There are very few grave sites up along Benstein Road, and just trying to be. I'm just not sure that the privacy fence needs to extend all that way. I'm open to that. I have no issue with that.
I think the whole and I guess it comes down to, my goal was to protect the grave sites from intrusion from bike, pedestrian, even if it's accidental. Someone dodges out of the way of a bike or rollerblader. But at the same time, we're realizing that there are some patrons there that are offended by the sound of the bar, the bike path, and the daycare. And the best solution to that would just do the, if you will, 500 feet of privacy fence. And then it's uniform for the south side of the cemetery. And at some other time, if we choose to do something on other cemeteries, as Bob said, Commerce Road, our farm fence, not even chain link, our farm fence is rusting away. And the homeowners made their own amendments on their property as they're allowed to put up the fence that they wanted. But I think we certainly have the funding capable of performing this task. The maintenance department has the ability to do it. And I'm guessing that it's relatively available. And it solves the problem of someone else coming back and saying, I want the same thing for my son, daughter, husband, wife, spouse, brother, sister, whomever, to try and do the best thing possible for the site. But I don't have a problem keeping the money in there for arborvitae, but I think you won't need the arborvitae if you have the fence up.
You still have to, it's still an aesthetic aspect to it.
There would need to be some kind of greenscaping
Yeah.
on. So I would still propose to go with the arborvitae, although I would say that we wouldn't have to plant them every 3 feet. We could plant them, because they will get fairly wide, we could plant them every 4 to 5 feet and probably accomplish what we're looking to do. But Dave Campbell, so so we're talking about 62 panels now. What was the all-in cost for the privacy fence again?
With 62 panels, privacy fence, including the post, is $240. The panel is 200, the post is another 40. So 62 at 240 is $14,880.
So just to be on the safe side, if we said not to exceed $16,000.
Yeah, so if Bob and I amend our original motion to not exceed.
Just make a new motion. It's gonna be, just make a new motion. You can't change the previous one.
Okay, well, we can, and it has been done before, but for the sake of expediting, making it faster. Thank you. I would move to install use a panel and arborvitae combination for the full length on the south side, not to exceed $20,000 from the purchase of the property funding that we received, if Bob supports that.
Support.
So we created the problem. We need to spend whatever it takes to fix it.
Agree.
Motion by Scott, supported by Burkheiser. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Scott.
Aye.
Burkheiser.
Aye.
Creech. Aye. Phillips.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Magner.
Aye.
Stovall.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Item number 4, moving on to the CARES Act funded Lucas device. I apologize if you think this came from the fire chief. The County of Oakland reached out to Janet Bushy and I in one of our individual webinars where the county was just double checking us to make sure that we were asking for reimbursements and getting reimbursements that we are due, making sure that we meet our deadlines and do everything. Some of those reimbursements, not to elongate this, they've asked us to submit for reimbursement for all straight time and overtime between March 23rd and June 1st for the fire department, police services, senior center services. I don't always understand the Democrats' way of thinking, but from Lansing to Oakland County, they are reimbursing us our straight time and overtime for the fire department, straight time and overtime for the police department, straight time and overtime for any position that we have where the people were demonstratively placed into dealing with a COVID situation. With that, they also came to us and said that they are supporting any fire department that wants to put in for hazard pay. We did. We've received the funding and it's being dispersed for 45 employees. We also were told by the County of Oakland that we can use this funding to buy Lucas devices if we need them. I knew that we were over the next 5 years going to be buying 2 more Lucas devices, or that would be the fire department's goal. So we had 1 Lucas device for each of our 4 ambulances. The Lucas device, just as a reminder, is a mechanical machine that does CPR perfectly every time. And I've invited the chief to come here, so he's got some more facts. But the county says if we put in for these to get these, they will reimburse them for us now 100%. So I asked the chief to get a bid for 2 Lucas devices so that we can use the CARES Act funding from the $219 million which the County of Oakland received, and state money, if necessary, to pay for these for the Commerce Township for free. Chief has.
So Dave, question.
Yep. Yes, please.
About 6-7 years ago, we had a request from the then fire chief for a device that did this. Yep. Provided some data, and I hate to say there were no studies that showed good medical studies that we would use in the United States that showed a benefit. And that, to be honest, there were studies, some of the studies showed that there was a detriment to using that type of a device over this. So 2 questions. One, how long have we had these devices? Because I don't ever remember authorizing us as a board in the last, whatever it's been, 7 years to purchase something like that. And 2, is there some data to support it? I mean, things change over 6 or 7 years, but so I'd like to review that. So I don't know how time sensitive this is, but
it is very time sensitive, but we can work through it. If I could, I know Chief Dundas has some data, if you will, that may answer some of your questions, but it is time sensitive for us to act. Just as a reminder, and I think the chief will touch on it, we have 2 Lucas devices. Originally, we received them from a manufacturer on a trial period. And then they also offered them to us, these used machines, if we wanted them at a discount. But Chief Dundas, if you could help answer those questions.
Let me just back up a second and say that the, you call them Lucas devices, it's a chest compression system. And one of the key terms that are used in talking about their effectiveness is ROSC, R-O-S-C, which stands for return of spontaneous circulation. So there are several studies that go back to 2007 and just about every year since then that show that they are significantly more effective than doing CPR manually. There's also a study that I could show you, that I could share with you, that shows us an increased percentage of cerebral blood flow to the brain. And then it's still another one that shows that the discharge percentage of critical patients is higher when they've had CPR with one of these machines. These are machines that are typically used in every emergency room in the area as well. They do use them at Huron Valley Hospital as well as Providence Novi when someone comes in off the street and they have to do CPR on them in the emergency room. Doing manual CPR is a very labor-intensive procedure, of course. Anybody that's had a CPR class knows that you get worn out pretty quick by doing it. Our protocols currently require us to do CPR for a minimum of 30 minutes, but if the patient's viable, that could be a lot longer time in doing that CPR. Let's see. It's also been proven that these machines in transport, during an emergency transport, are much safer for the rescuers as they can be seat belted in while they're traveling, lights and siren. I'd be happy to answer any questions about these particular things. Those are some of the things that I had to say. I did take the liberty of sending the board the quote from Stryker, the Stryker company that sells the Lucas machines. They're quoting us a discounted price that is currently a part of a consortium that all of the area fire departments are purchasing these machines and getting a group rate for them.
What is that total, Chief?
The total for 2 of these is $38,276.83.
And one of the questions Mr. Berkheiser had, do you know when we got the loaner Stryker machines for evaluation and use? Like I said, I know Providence Park was using them, Huron Valley was using them, and we introduced 2 as trial. Do you know how long that was?
We've been using them for just under 2 years on 2 of our trucks.
Okay. And
Chief,
those, when you do budget them, they're carried under medical supply or medical equipment?
That's correct.
Okay.
Chief, what's the frequency of use? So how many times a week or a month are we using the 2 machines we have?
You know, George, I'm sorry I don't have that statistic handy for you, but we try to use them on every CPR run that we go on. Anytime anybody's heart stops beating, we try to slide that machine on them. And like I said, it frees up hands to do other things. And in terms of the operation of it, it's fairly simple to attach it to a patient whose heart has stopped beating. And one of the things that Dave alluded to is that I don't know if there's a such thing as perfect CPR, but certainly the human error involved in doing CPR has to do with the rate of compressions and also the depth of compressions, where that's an adjustment that's made in these machines fairly quickly at the beginning of CPR and does give a very consistent rate and depth of compression. That's kind of what leads to the increased percentages of positive outcomes.
So
based on that, though, you're saying they get used frequently.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bob.
Chief, the concern at the time, Chief, was that the data wasn't there and the studies weren't there. I would be interested if you have something that you can either scan and email to me, just, I guess, my own interest. But at the time, I mean, I likened it to I told the fire chief at the time, would you want me to try an experimental drug on your wife where I know it may or may not work, but I know the gold standard works. And so, you know, at that point, there were studies in Western countries, because there were a lot of them that were in, you know, uncontrolled Singapore and different things like that, that showed that it was either the same or a little bit better, but the ones that were done in Canada and United States and Europe, which we generally look at as being somewhat the care we provide and the situations we provide, did not show anything better. So obviously that was 6-7 years ago. I'm sure things have improved since then. Wasn't aware we were using them. I would think that would have been something, especially if we paid money for them, that should have come to the board. I don't have any problem with moving forward, but I would be interested in looking at the data, please.
Happy to send you that data, Bob. I do have some of the studies and summaries of those studies in front of me. I'll scan those over to you tonight. You know, and as far as the purchase of the ones we had before, they were a part of some of those budget discussions that we had, although we didn't spend a lot of time on it.
Any other, I guess to move towards further discussion if need be, because this is time sensitive, we do have a window of operation to order, acquire, pay for, and be reimbursed. I would move to support purchasing 2 Stryker machines not to exceed $39,000.
I'll support it.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, question. So the other 2 that we have right now, are they the same model, the same or similar?
They
Yes.
are.
All of these things are compatible, yes.
So which vehicle are these kept in?
Currently, I have one on Medic 4 at Station 4 and one on Medic 2 at Station 2.
So where do the other 2 go? On Medic?
The other 2 will go, yeah, they'll be all on Medic trucks.
All
we want
medics.
one at each station.
Okay.
So of course we would put one at Station 1, then all 3 of the current medic trucks that we have would have one on there. And then the second we start running with an ambulance out of Station 3, we'll put one on that truck as well.
Okay. Does Walled Lake use that?
So do those?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
So do these machines transfer to our contracted ambulance? So if that's something we choose to use, they go on that ambulance, or how does that work? If
we had a CPR run, we would probably be going with the patient, whether they were in our truck or the private ambulance company's truck, and we would not let that machine out of our sight. If that machine was going to the hospital, we would go with it.
Okay.
All right. A roll call vote, Clerk Creech. Motion by Scott, supported by Magna.
I know you had to hear me. I had to unmute.
I know.
Scott,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Stovall,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Burkheiser.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all.
If I could just take a second and thank the board for their support. David, I'd also like to thank you for finding this grant money for us and you know, allowing me to make the most of these opportunities. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it greatly, and the board as well. And let me ask the board, do you want to take the item 6 resolution for People's Express and the SAD before budget to knock those out of the park?
Mhm.
I think if you
Yes.
don't mind, we'll take item number 6. We were notified by SMART. SMART gives us credits, money to use for transportation. One of the things that has fallen into our laps, again, CARES Act funding, is getting reimbursables from the state of Michigan to pay SMART to pay us. So SMART has passed along to us a resolution which they are asking us to enact so that they can get reimbursements from CARES Act funding, which will also get us funding. This again was a time sensitive. We have found, and I'm sure as you have seen on the news and in your emails of different caliber, when the governor releases and they change where funding can be used, how funding can be used, it's now pushed to, if you will, public transportation for reimbursables and things of that nature. This came to us. Thank you, Treasurer Phillips, for receiving this email from SMART and Madonna Van Hoosen, I believe, or I apologize. I don't want to misstate her name. I have it.
Van Fossen.
Yep, Madonna Van Fossen, our regional SMART transportation representative. So by us enacting and acting on this resolution for funding, it just gives us another opportunity to reach out to support our service provider, being People's Express, with funding through CARES Act funding.
Question, Dave. Why does it go through June 30th of 2023?
They have.
SMART fiscal year.
Go ahead, Molly.
The SMART fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th.
But of 23?
So when we get our SMART money, so what used to happen with the SMART money, we used to get $17,632 a year. We'd get it anytime during the year, usually in June or July, and then we would transfer all of it to White Lake to cover their use of the SMART buses to do Commerce Township. This year, for the 2020 year, which is fiscal year ending June 30th of 2020, we elected not to give the money to White Lake, which, since it wasn't going back into a SMART operation, put us on a reimbursement track. So we have to take all of the invoices we've paid to People's Express through June 30th, which only covers 6 months of the year because we didn't start with People's Express until January 1st, and submit them to SMART for reimbursement. And as long as they are equal to or over the $17,632, they will send us our money back. So now they're going from July 1st through June 30th of 2021. They're going to give us our $17,632, but there's another $24,780 or something like that we can get from CARES. And if you put those two together, it gives us, $42,000. And I think our contract with People's Express is $7,600 a month. So we're more than going to cover it.
So
Molly,
but the 2023, so it's 3 years out from now. That's my question. Why is it 3 years out from now?
It's my understanding that they try and match the regional budgets. So if Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, if everyone is operating a 3-year budget, they're trying to match that as well. So they stay on the same rotation and funding sources.
Okay.
so Molly, with the switch over to SMART, and we used to transfer credits to White Lake, is Wolverine Lake transferring credits to us since we provide People's Express to Wolverine Lake? How does that work? Or is that something we're looking at?
Yes, as a matter of fact, so Emily and I have had discussions on this, and I think Emily's been in contact with Madonna, but Wolverine Lake gets about $2,400 in credits from SMART. But again, theirs has become a reimbursement only. They don't just get it. So they had to pay something. So we're going to invoice them for the services that they used, and they're going to pay us back and then Smart will reimburse them. So we'll end up getting Wolverine Lake's money also, but only to the extent that it's covered by Smart.
So that is only addressing the SMART credits. As far as this CARES Act reimbursement, Madonna has already included Wolverine's number into that 24,780. That's Commerce and Wolverine because she knew that we were providing the service.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you, Emily. So I would entertain a motion to adopt said resolution to move forward.
Motion to approve the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act funding agreement. Is that what we're looking at, the agreement? Okay.
Support.
What else you want me to say? Is that good?
You got it. You're good. Motion by
Okay.
Burkreiser, supported by Phillips. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Burkeiser,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Weber,
Aye.
Wagner,
Aye.
Sobel.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye. Thank you all. Motion carries. Item number 7, moving it ahead of the 2021 budget discussion. Lower Straits Lake Preservation Committee, SAD. We have been inundated with questions, inquiries, FOIAs, comments, with new construction, subdivision associations dissolving, failing, the things that you all have seen over years with Lower Straits Lake. It really has come to a point in time where the Lower Straits Lake preservation system has to be redone. As it exists today, there is one person who will have to pay $5,000, another person's going to pay $1,500, and a third person down the street's only going to pay $68. It's a terribly inequitable system, though I'm sure when it was originally devised, it had the best of intentions. But Treasurer Phillips and I have discussed this in detail. We've had discussions individually with a plethora of the residents, and in talking to our legal counsel, we don't have the ability to restructure it and have public comments and do all those things in a short period of time. But we do have the ability to stop the SAD and then work towards regrouping to a new system that would be equitable, representing all participants, as opposed to the people who, and not to pick on them, but an organized, well-run and long-standing neighborhood like Edgewood, they're organized, they've got their act together, they know what they're doing. But then we have a new build on the lake, Miss Sherry Diaz, and just because of her peninsula home, she's got to pay $5,000. And a lot of the property that she owns, it's not navigatable by the treatment company, so they can't motor around all the property and treat her area. But just because of linear feet, she's being charged an exorbitant rate. I believe she has her son or daughter has an adjacent home. That home in and of itself is not navigatable, if you will, but it would be a $1,500 spot. You could take another parcel on the lake that's pie-shaped. It may only have a very small section that touches the lake. They could have a dock that's God knows how long with 20 boats on it, and they only pay $68. So I really think we have to take steps as a township to rein this in, reorganize it, and help the citizens instead of just putting money indirectly to try and solve a problem. I'm eager to know what your opinions would be. I just know that the way it's run right now is really bad.
So doesn't it end in like either a year or two, or we're close to the
22.
10 year? Okay. So as someone who's been involved with this takes a year to do. You can't do it this time of year because for them to pull a new petition, then circulate. The problem is you have so many people in the winter that are, out in Florida or different places and whatever. So it seems like we aren't going to do it by resolution. I don't think. We've never done it by resolution. We've always done it by petitioners. So I think it's not something I want. I think we should end tonight without giving that a heads up, because it's going to take months for them to figure this out. I would like to also look at, because we did something on our lake where we, instead of going through the township, we ended up going through the Oakland County Drain Commission, and they in turn send the bills to Molly to put on our tax roll, whatever. Now, I don't know if that's because 10% of the lake is in White Lake and we had 2 communities, so I don't know the answer to that one. But I think we probably need to do a little more research and bring in Peter Pace, John Levinson. There's a group of the people that are on the unofficial board. At least give them a heads up, unless you already have. But they've been one of the more active groups on this.
John clearly has been a diehard volunteer, leading the way to make sure that Lower Straits Lake gets the attention that it needs, with not a lot of support. I know other people you have named in there participate. I believe from discussing it with Attorney Hans Renthrop, we really only have a couple of options. One, leave it alone, let it run, and allow it to be unequitable. 2, we can simply rebid it and try and get cheaper costs, so it's not, the linear foot is not so expensive for everybody. The third one is to suspend and cease the SAD and let them work with us to come up with a new resolution. As you know, Mr. Sobel, we had it set up where we could have a company come in with 2 harvesters, but it got to the point where we didn't have the place that we needed to launch the boats and gain access to the lake. So it was safe, deep, and there was enough room to work, refused us access.
Right.
So
As far as being cheaper, so remember, this is this complicated. Dr. Pullman, I mean, I don't know how many other people out there can do that. Jeff Knox has been the applicator for the last 20 years or more, or whatever. I'm not sure where the cost, if it's on the application side or the Dr. Pullman side. Unless things have changed, Dr. Pullman did like 80% of the lakes in our area in Oakland County or Tri-County area. I don't know if that's still true or not. But yeah, I agree. We probably need to look at it, but I don't think it's something we can fix tonight.
Well, we could fix it tonight by just saying we're not collecting it this year, because at this point in time, you have, out of 250 people who are assessed on the lake, there are 8 people who pay over $1,000. And if you add those 8 people up, so 8 out of 250 is 0.6%, and they're paying hang on. It's 0.3%, and they're paying 22% of the bill.
But they're not complaining.
23% of the people assessed are paying 22% of the bill.
We might get, if you end it, you will have an uprising, because then the lake, you've got the most $1 million homes on that lake. And then I've been on the lake numerous times, and without the weeds, that lake will become not navigable for boats.
Okay, wait a second, time out, just a second. There's $68,000 in the SAD. We usually assess $78,000. Instead of refunding that, we could leave it in there to cover next year's costs, and they'd have until next year to get a petition to us to reinstate the SAD on some more equitable basis than linear footage.
But that's not ending it then. I don't think we should end it.
I appreciate that.
There's 1 year left. We can reallocate. I think so. I'd like to get an opinion from Hans as to what all our legal options are, and let the various people know from the lake.
And Molly, what is the tax? I mean, if somebody wants to complain about their taxes, they go to wherever you want to call it. What is the complaint structure for an SAD? I sort of feel this is something they asked for. I realize it's old, but it was asked for, it was approved, and to just automatically stop it, I don't know. I don't know that I feel that way. You can argue, I realize you could say the SAD is not a tax. I understand that, but our income tax system isn't fair either. So,
well, our SAD is set up on linear footage, and Sherry Diaz didn't have a house on the lake or own the peninsula. It wasn't assessed to any property that didn't have a home on it. And the property she bought didn't have a home on it. And then as soon as she got her certificate of occupancy, she got hit with a $4,500 lake weed bill.
And that means she's got a whole lot of frontage.
When it was set up, she was never part of the SAD when it was set up. She didn't sign the petition. She's got her lawyer threatening to charge us with taxation without representation, which, you know.
Well, there is no such thing.
And then everybody else is going to do it.
You don't have to sign.
But you know what? The neighbor across the street moved into this neighborhood. She should have evaluated what it was. He didn't sign up for the snowplow district either, and yet they have to pay that fee. I understand what they're saying, and I feel that they need to circulate a new petition, get their required 51%, and we'll go back and through it. I don't feel that it's our job to blow up an entire SAD for an entire lake neighborhood because one or two people are complaining. I don't know. I understand, but then when you're changing it to make it equitable, what's equitable? By piece of property? So therefore, now someone who's got a small piece of property that might have 50 feet on the front on the lake, all of a sudden theirs is going to jump way high because they're going to be paying the same amount as somebody that's got 500 feet on the lake. I'm not sure there is ever anything that's equitable. So it's in place. If you think what is in there now will pay for it, I'm not sure what the rules are for whether we should just not collect it this year or not. But then what happens next year?
I don't know. Help me understand the process here, though. The SAD was originally put in place by petition. Is that correct? Back many years ago. So is it our responsibility? It's not just, is it our responsibility, but should we, for a few, arbitrarily cancel an SAD when hundreds of people don't know this discussion is even going on? I don't know how we do that and surprise the vast majority of property owners and then force something to happen versus having those that are being, if they believe they're being egregiously affected, to proactively start a new petition for a new SAD. Why wouldn't we put that responsibility on those that want the change versus us arbitrarily doing it and surprising hundreds of people?
No, great question. And that's why I'm bringing this forward as a discussion topic this evening. I do believe that you're headed towards a special meeting for this topic alone. And the biggest people, the largest bills, those people who are getting the biggest bill, they don't have a vote because they're not in a subdivision association. So they're turning to us for assistance because they don't have a seat at the table. So I guess what I'm asking, or maybe advising, the attorneys prepared to answer the questions that Mr. Sobel presented. I do believe that we're going to see a special board meeting on this topic to resolve it. It probably won't be till November. And I think that we need to work through the problem in a special.
They're going to pay for a special board meeting? They're going to pay for a special board meeting.
We could pay for it through our administrative fees that we attach to the SAD.
Why?
Why?
So let me say this, as far as, I understand, first of all, by their very nature, SADs are not necessarily fair or equitable. That's just the nature of the law. As far as some people, you're saying not having a seat at the table, I agree with that. But once 51% are sign, they don't need to even tell the others about it, and they could still not have any, using someone's term, their representation. That's, we're the ones, it's us that represents them, not the lake board members. It's the township board that represents them in an SAD. That's why we have the public hearings.
But I agree, but I believe that over the time, from the time it began to today, there's been enough changes, if you will, to go back to the initial creation of this SAD. The lakefront owners opted to bear the burden because they didn't want the lake users, or quote unquote backlot occupants who have access through Maple Point Beach, shores of Bay Point, wherever, whoever has a community beach, didn't want to be overwhelmed or overruled by backlot residents that would be paying.
That's common. All people, I live on the lake. Those of us who live on the lake, same thing. The lake front owners compared to the lake privilege owners are usually outnumbered. And so it's usually the lakefront owners that absorb more of the burden of their costs when they want to do something to the lake. But at the same time, we get more benefit too. The lakefront owners do. So that's, fair from that standpoint.
I agree. I guess I brought this forward as a discussion topic. It is something that is, amidst tax bills and absentee ballots, it is a top priority, and it is something I would imagine you'll hear from. So with
Can we
that,
put it on October discussion?
Put it on,
unless that's gonna be too close to with the election, but that way we have the whole night. We don't need a special election or a special
that's fine.
meeting.
That's fine.
It's
and we'll
only a
let
month
those
away.
people know, and we'll go from there.
What about don't we have an October board meeting? Yes, we have an October board meeting, right?
We do.
Will Hans have all the answers to everything? I mean, this SAD had to have been renewed. So how was it renewed? Did they go back out and get signatures to renew it? They're only good for 10 years, I think.
I think this has only been a 10-year.
Yeah, they got 2 more years left. We're in year 8.
Okay, so this is the initial one. It's not been renewed yet.
Well, no, this is not the initial.
Oh, okay.
This 10-year cycle, it's coming to the end of the 10-year cycle.
Okay.
All right. It will go on to the upcoming board meeting. With that, moving on to the 2021 Township Board discussion. Is it using the way that it was sent out to you by Janet Bushy? Is it easy just to go one by one through that, or do you want to do it in an odd order?
Well, I'm not sure I saved it in the Bushy order. So if you just want to call out how you want to go.
Yep.
I just have it in front of me the way it came out from Janet Bushy, starting with the Open Space Fund 2021.
Okay, I don't have that.
I have that.
That's fine.
And maybe just since I see that we have all the department heads are on and ready, just an opening comment from myself. Obviously all the discussions we've had to date are that we're trying to be very conservative for 2021, lots of unknowns. I don't recall ever seeing so many requests, and obviously I've only been through a few of these budget processes, but there's significant requests for added headcount. And just so people can prepare, the first question I'm going to have for that is, what critical items that will not be performed without these extra heads? And as a comparator, what didn't get done in 2020 that was critical that must get done in 2021, and the only way we can do it is by adding headcount.
Okay. Well, we have Emily England on here with us to assist us through the green space. I would remind the board, and I know that COVID has sent this off sideways. One thing that would likely be a green space project that we don't have on the list, but we all have to remain attuned to, is the Union Lake boat launch acquisition. The existing boat launch on the north, we placed a offer to purchase that from the Department of Natural Resources. The COVID hit before they could do their appraisal and evaluation and respond back to us. So we should understand, my offer to buy it was for $1, and they're going to come up with a fair market value appraisal If you believe, as I do, that that's a property that would have value for us to obtain and keep as a pocket park carry-on site, we should add it to the green space plan.
Dave, do you have a feel for what that, a range?
Honestly, I think it will be, and I don't, but I also would share with all of you. I think that the benefit Commerce Township provides the state of Michigan by keeping that a pocket park where you can carry on a kayak, a canoe, or a stand-up paddleboard, but more importantly, still allow the lake users to park their boat, walk up the hill to go to the Dairy Queen, the Subway, the Jets Pizza, Dolly's Pizza, and all those things as they do is phenomenal. So I would implore you all, if we can't get it done soon, to beat them up and get it for $1. And I'm happy to call our state reps and senators to push that. But you know, I don't know what one lot is going to be worth. In my purchase request, Mr. Campbell was there. I told them I have no interest in the parking lot on the other side, and we would deed that over to the road commission for road expansion. We are only interested in maintaining a pocket park on the waterfront to benefit our lake property owners, our lake users. And if you will, we're continuing to keep a state park property open and usable, and they don't have to pay for it. So I would hold their feet to the fire to get this as equitably as possible. But I think really it's just on the list of projects or things. If we just add it into Emily's list of things to do for a true property acquisition, I would just ask that you put the Union Lake Boat Launch Pocket Park on the document at some point in time.
Okay. And Dave and or Molly, maybe just a process question as we go through these. So the intent of tonight's meeting is to approve the budget. Is that correct?
No.
No, we'll tentatively approve all of these individually, and then in October we would move to approve.
So October is the formal approval. Okay.
So we're doing all of these tentative, just like we did police and fire and everything else. And then there were changes that we said we were going to, Janet was taking lists of all the changes that we approved and wanted things bumped up or knocked down. And then they'll all come together at the October meeting and we'll approve all of them.
Okay.
So, with all the changes.
So let's do open space. We're doing open space?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Emily,
Yes.
Buyer's house, $100,000. What do you think you could do to the house for $100,000 to make it usable for the public to go into it? Is that a realistic number?
That was the number that was given to us when we received the cost estimate from the structural engineer 4 or 5 years ago. So we put that in there as a placeholder. And I want to say, like, the list of priorities here, 1 through 6, they can be interchangeable. And some of those dollar amounts, for example, this one, it may not be so much about the dollar amount, but it needs to be about the decision and moving forward on that project, which is why I put that as number 1, because it's kind of an ongoing. And so now we are moving forward. We are going to be receiving bids back. We're going to have actual numbers, but the $100,000 came back from a prior number that was given to us to make the building structurally sound so that people could go in it.
Okay. Is that still only allowing the 4? They would be over the 4 to 5 people?
The capacity isn't due to the structure, the stability of the building. It's due to the entrance and exits of the building. So we would need to get back with Todd and have him come through. And I believe that the actual capacity of the building is higher than that. We limited it to that because of the integrity of the structure.
Right. Yeah. That just seems really low. The $100,000 doesn't seem like a high enough number to fully fix it. So I just want to make sure it's being realistic.
I think so. Even when we walked the site with Plant Moran, Cressa, he didn't seem like that was an unrealistic number when they got in and looked at it. I agree with you. I thought that as well, but all the experts we've had come in have
Right.
not really bat an eye at it. So
That's good news then.
hopefully. Okay, so like I said, the 1 through 6 priorities, there's 1 through 10, but the 1 through 6 priorities, I put in order based upon how long we've been looking at these projects, as well as parks that haven't seen the benefits of the millage money to get the improvements. So that's why they're where they're at. So number 2 would be Hickory Glen, which we are working on that concept plan. We did do the site walk and we've had a preliminary meeting with Living Lab regarding the preliminary concept. And the idea over there isn't to make major changes within that park, but to add an emergency entrance and add parking pods. So right now there's no direction where people can park. So we want to give people like that's obviously where you park. So there's no more pulling in, parking along the road. There's designated areas, and then allow an area that could be considered overflow parking. So not paving an area, but have an area that could be opened up by the league and managed by the league so that when they have tournaments, they can park people in there in an organized manner so that people are not parking along Glengarry Road. We put the $250,000 in there. We have not received cost estimates back for that. But I don't feel like we're doing a lot of paving and more organizing in that park than major improvements. Bicentennial Park is something that's been on the radar for a long time. We've had a lot of discussions about those tennis courts. Those tennis courts either need to be completely redone, repurposed. The conversation has always been pickleball. Every time we redo our master plan, we get a lot of requests for pickleball. Pickleball seems to fit better at the Richardson Center. So if that's the case, then we would move the tennis court / pickleball court over to the Richardson Center, which would allow us to repurpose the tennis courts and then do a facelift on that baseball diamond, which we are actually working on getting pricing on now. And it looks like we can get that done for less than $10,000. So the $100,000 in there is to give a neighborhood park that needs a facelift, a major facelift. The Richardson Center is on here next because of the moving of the potential tennis courts, pickleball courts, as well as addressing parking issues. And so again, we looked at this in a way that we don't want to just pave a big area. We don't want to pave an area that's only, for the concerts in the park. We want to allow an area that could be overflow parking, but we need to at least meet the capacity of the building for rentals and senior activities. So we are working through that plan. Again, we do not have a cost estimate on that, so we put placemark at $250,000 there. Wise Woods and Victory Park, that again has always been on our radar to do something. Parks talked about doing on the north side, which would be the Wise Woods side, that little small parking lot that at least give people a safe place to pull off the road and park. We already know from the road commission that they're not going to require a lot of road improvements to put that parking lot in. And the $100,000 is the cost estimate we received at the time we did the construction documents for that project. Millrace Park, everybody knows the issues we have in Millrace Park. Another park that could use a facelift. We need to get in there and do some forestry work to help the sunlight come in, to help dry up the ground, to open it up a bit, make people feel more comfortable in there, maybe put some benches in there. One bridge needs some repair work. It's always going to be a passive park, but we want to make it a more friendly, available park.
So Emily, if I understand the process here, these 6 items you're committing to complete in 2021.
That's the goal.
Providing we give this level of funding. Understanding there's a pin in Hickory Glen and Richardson until you get the cost back.
Correct.
Okay.
So then moving through, because when Parks looks at this, they go through each park to see what the potential need could be. So Maple Glen, one of the leagues in Maple Glen came to us, and they have a significant amount of money to do improvements in there. And they want to partner with us to do those improvements. And so we discussed putting in pavilions to give people shaded area, protected areas to sit with their families, more benches, and then internal signage within that park. Long Park, and I know Mark is working on some of this, but the covered bridge, you know, it could use a little facelift. It's good, but it needs a little help. And then we always have the aquatic vegetation in there. Like it's getting pretty overgrown, and we're starting to see the wildlife being affected by it. And then there was discussion of that parking lot. I don't know if we can actually expand that parking lot, but we at least need to look at resurfacing that parking lot, making it a nicer surface. Snowy Ridge, they would like to install lighting on the hill, and then the trail connections, they would like to look at the Trailways master plan that we included in our 5-year master plan and make connections that make sense if it's available within our budget.
I guess I would throw out something. Just I know that I put an awful lot of effort into the Michigan Airline Trail, and I really would like to see the board support Emily in putting a great deal of effort, and not to complicate things, but the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation has $20 billion they're trying to give away, and they have 20 years to do it. We are a prime candidate if we can, whether it's through consulting, whether it's through partnership with economic development with Oakland County, like we did with the Michigan Airline Trail. And we have some people that are able and willing to participate, myself included. A great deal of these parks, keeping in mind, and I would, all listeners and the board, look up the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. There's 4 things that they're looking to spend their money on: senior centers, trails, parks, and then supporting single family education, things like that. A lot of these projects could be paid for, or a sizable amount of this could be done if we were to, and it may be hiring a consultant to carry these forward. I would tell you John Hensler, who is the trail manager, is adept and well-versed in this, has direct contact. We've done that through the airline trail, through our partnership. And I would tell you all to unleash Emily on this organization. Commerce will do nothing but benefit from it. But are there, other than, I would have loved to seen trail connections be a higher priority. And I too would love to see Mill Race Park be a half-mile circle that allows the schools to connect to Mill Race, to Byers, to Dodge, and the library. But I'm glad to see all of them are getting attention. I'd love to see all of them completed in the coming year. It's been long overdue, and the board has tried diligently to get some of these done. Is there anybody that sees anything erroneous with the green space that would not tentatively approve?
I have a couple of questions.
So I have some questions too.
Go ahead, Molly.
Go ahead.
Ladies first.
So on the current year budget versus activity, do we know what out of the 1.66 million capital purchases we have not spent? So we've only spent 446,000, and will that money be spent between now and the end of the year?
Yeah, so we have the Dodge Park Phase 2 over at Scarlet Smile, which is on schedule to be complete by the end of the year. So there is $653,500.86 left to do in construction, possibly average $45,000 in engineering fees, and then there's a $90,847 out there in contingency that we hope not to spend, and I think we are on track not to spend, and that is with all landscaping and irrigation being donated, which I think we are on the right track to have that done also. So yes, there is a large $789,347.86 that will come out this year.
Okay. But it won't it won't be the full, because right now we're short between the consultants and the capital outlay. We're short by 1.25 million. So we're not going to spend all of that this year.
No.
we're gonna be short $400,000 of what we're gonna spend for this year.
Correct.
Okay,
Go ahead, Bob.
So my question, I think my question's sort of along the same lines. Maybe I just don't understand what Molly's spitting all the numbers out. We have already spent roughly $450,000, correct? And you said we have another $790,000 that we expect to spend by the end of the year?
Correct.
And that 790,000 is, I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. So if you add that in or take it away from the 1.9, that means we have maybe 1.1 that's carrying over. Is that
Correct.
Yes. So with the bottom number that you're seeing, and Janet, maybe you can clarify this, but I believe the $714,161 for the 2021 requested budget included all of the priority items 1 through 10, not just 1 through 6.
Yes, it did. You're right.
So how much? Okay. So
if we do
without me doing
all
the math,
10 priorities,
correct.
then the ending fund balance should be $714,161.
So, but in theory, based on time and just reasonableness of getting things done, we should add, if I take off 7 through 10, we add another $275,000 to the 714 for the fund balance carrying forward to 2022 is
Correct.
probably realistic.
Yes.
And if we get through it, or if you're able to pull off all 6 and you have time left over, then we know that Wise Wood is next on the hit list.
Correct.
Tentatively approve. Looking around the room.
the only other thing that I would like to point out, I did rerun a winter tax roll this morning using our Headley reduced rates for parks and open space. And right now it shows us getting 840,500, not 849 in as revenue next year. Now granted, which is on this year's tax roll is what's gonna be our budget for next year. So, and our, wonderful interest rates have dropped back down to like 2014 levels. And I think it's safer to put our interest income back down to about 10,000. Not that those are big numbers when we're talking millions, but it's reducing your revenue by about 15,000.
Actually, my question was how close the 850 was. My last one, and this is more just as an info to the board, yesterday's parks meeting, looking at those tennis courts, it's felt that one probably have to basically tear out, but what is also being looked at, so there's things that need to be done, but it's more for you guys to think about, is the potential of putting a skate park in there. So whatever you want to call that, whether that's rollerblades, skateboards, that type stuff. So those are things that are being talked about to put into a neighborhood park, especially if we're moving tennis courts and pickleball. So it's just more to mull over.
I appreciate that.
Dave, I have no.
I was gonna say, Bob, I appreciate the update on the skate park kind of thing. I would say that we should learn from Commerce Memorial. And if we're thinking about putting something of that caliber in a neighborhood, we should do the planning commission mentality of send everybody within 300 feet a card and say,
Okay.
What do you think? Do you want this in your backyard?
Good idea.
Okay.
The idea is to try to do not a complete concept plan, but to at least address that community, the users of that park,
Yes.
and get their opinion. So there's still a lot we need to look at.
Did you have a price tag for
Milford's
that?
well
Bob?
into their project and well into their donation list. They have great videos if you want to see what Milford is doing when it comes to skate park and Central Park.
Bob, did you guys have a price tag on the skate park?
There were different modules. This has nothing to do with, I'm just trying to remember what it was, but nothing to do with refinishing concrete or whatever it would be, just the actual skate park. And there were different things you could purchase, as you would expect. So it can go from 35,000 to 100,000. Heck, there was one they showed that was 350,000, but so it just depends on what you're looking for. This is not my thing, dude. So I don't know. A half pipe was one of them. Different stuff that they have. It's I will say this. I said this to the guys last night. The board is that I did my little study of my Boy Scout troop. And I can say that out of the 20 or so scouts that were there were none that were looking for tennis courts, but they thought a skate park sounded good. So that's my N of 20.
So
but I do agree. I think canvassing the neighborhood and letting them know what the thoughts are is a good idea.
With the skate park, they presented us two different options. One of them, we didn't have to do as much work with the surfacing. And it was a very low maintenance. It just wasn't going to serve as many people. And then the other options, like Bob was talking about, could go up to $350,000, but it's something that you could phase in. So you could buy a piece here, a piece there, do it over time. And they will take our budget. If we have a $25,000 budget, they will design us a $25,000 skate park. They just gave us ideas so that we could see what we could get with the money.
Before I move on to the next budget, I will tell you all, another supervisor from Northern Michigan contacted me and said, put your skate park at the base of Snowy Hill so that it becomes a dual purpose area. So in the summertime, your grassy knoll can be used for the quote unquote off-road skateboards, and the base of the hill will have your technical hard surface skateboards. And when it's all covered in snow and everything, it'll be a dual use park. But with that, I'll move open space off the table as a tentatively approved, gone, and move on to, since we have Emily's attention, Parks and Recreation Department.
Good, yeah.
Okay. Emily, I will say too, I like the way you laid that open space out with the priorities, et cetera. I think it made it easy for us to see what you were going to accomplish this year.
Thank you. Okay. So this wasn't an easy budget to do. I always try to keep things simple, and simple wasn't what this year called for. So you'll see in the top, I'm going to go through the sheet that I submitted. Supplies, I'm keeping the same as 2020. So I'm trying to plan for a normal year, but unfortunately we don't know what next year holds. So contracted services, cleaning, keeping that the same, pest control the same, Sonitrol the same, copy machine the same. Those are still the same contracted numbers. Mileage allowance the same, equipment maintenance the same. Building and grounds maintenance was $97,700. That included outhouses. That number actually went down because now we're putting the restroom in over at Dodge, so that will reduce that amount. Road grading at Hickory and Maple Glen, which this year did not require as much as normal, but that was $12,000, and that was a quote that I was given. Carpet cleaning at the Richardson Center. We typically clean the carpets in there 3 times a year, so $2,100. The Phragmites treatment over at Long Park, I put a placeholder in there of the $6,000 if we still feel that that is needed for next year. The mowing is $63,000, and then any miscellaneous work that comes up that would include tree work or large trees that Mark and his crew couldn't handle, $9,500. Miscellaneous things that happen at the Richardson Center, $2,000. Program and event funding is where it got tough for me because this year proved to not be a typical year, which proved my budget needs potential of being higher. Concerts, last year we budgeted $3,000 per concert. I changed that back to $2,000 because I'm aware that we do need to make cuts in some areas because we don't know what next year holds. So the $20,000 will allow us to hold the concerts in the park. Last night we did discuss concerts in the park, and we want to plan as if 2021 is going to be a normal year and we are allowed to hold those. Senior and park programming is up to $10,000, and that is up because seniors usually come to the center. They come to us, they do their activities with us. They're not able to do that now. So what we've been doing is instead of putting out a newsletter every other month, we're putting out a newsletter every month. That newsletter isn't just a newsletter, it's a puzzle pack. gives them things to do, gives them activities to do. We've been doing senior center to go kits. We've actually paid for 2 of them this year that we did get reimbursed through the CARES Act with Oakland County. But we've been teaming up with the home care agencies, and they've been sponsoring different events for the seniors. So I hope we don't need to continue that next year. But I also think that our priority are our seniors and their well-being and keeping them active. So I put that money in there so that we are still able to continue that service. Senior meals. Since March, we have been providing Commerce Township residents meals. They are able to get 7 frozen meals a week, 5 sack lunches. Anybody who's not a Commerce resident, we charge them $2, which is what we are charged for that. Up until now, that money, all those expenses came out of CDBG money. We do have CDBG money programmed for 2020 that will cover some of the expense for next year. The end of this year, we did find out through the CARES Act that we can submit that and get reimbursed for that, but that's not a guarantee for next year. So if we are not allowed to open and provide meals in-house, which as of Friday looks like we are going to be able to slowly start opening, in order to provide that meals, it would be $51,000 for next year to budget to provide that for our residents, those emergency type meals.
Emily, just as a reference point, what did we spend on senior meals in 2019?
2019?
Yeah, so what was a normal year? What would be?
We didn't spend money on meals because we've never provided meals in this fashion.
Okay,
we've
so
always,
it was 0 then.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, this is where it got hard for me because this is something that we've never had to do, but I think it's important to do. So I put it in there. If that's a service that we want to continue, that was averaging $5,500 a month.
So can you give us some feedback from the seniors and any other people that are eligible to take part in this in the meals program? Are we seeing new people that are coming to the senior center, or just give us a flavor for how this is being received and whether in the amount of worthwhileness you put into it?
It's been a lot of new faces. I was very happy to see that the people who are partaking in this service are people who truly need it. A lot of the seniors who come to our center, this isn't a service that they would need financially. The people that are taking advantage of this, I think, are people that it is truly benefiting, and it is also bringing new people into the senior center. So we range anywhere from 40 to 80 seniors. The number has gone down now that the colder months are coming. They've also been very good about, take me off the list. I have enough frozen meals for now. They're not being greedy when it comes to the free service for them. I think it's been a wonderful thing. I'm proud to say that we did this for our community.
So Emily, how is this different than Meals on Wheels, or do we still have that?
Right.
It is Meals on Wheels. But we had the CDBG money to spend, we've been providing it at no charge to the seniors.
Okay.
So in order to continue,
doing that for 2021.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if we reopen, and like I say, as of Friday, I'm working with Hans, looks like we're going to be able to slowly do that. If they come in-house, then it'll go back to the standard hot meals that they pay for and they sign up for. And then those free meals that we give will slowly start going away because we are open. They are able to come to us.
But they're coming to you to get the free meals right now?
No. Yes, they do. It's a drive-through service. We're there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They pull up, we do a no contact delivery to their car.
So I guess I'm just wondering what's the difference of whether they come and grab a hot meal or come grab a frozen meal?
We don't have hot meals now, and they can't, they don't have the ability to come in and get that hot meal. So that's
but we'll charge them if we do that.
We've always charged the $3 for that, yes.
Emily, I really appreciate the attention you put to this process. And I have to, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but for the public that are going to watch it some other time, the services that you, Allison, and Mickey have been providing to our seniors and those people who are truly in need is simply spectacular.
Thank you.
I can't imagine any reason why we would not tentatively approve it. So I'm going to put the pressure on the entire township board. I apologize. I don't mean to embarrass. It's somebody's 42nd wedding anniversary tonight, and we're not going to be spending all night here. Molly's going to go home and spend time with Brady and hopefully watch a debate. But to move this along, if we could tentatively approve the parks budget, please.
Yeah, I just had one question, wondering if the mowing went up this year compared to last year, the cost for mowing.
It did.
Yeah.
When we budgeted it, we didn't budget for the weed whipping. So every other week they're doing the weed whipping.
Okay, and is that a contract that will go out for bids every few years?
It's currently on a yearly contract. We need to submit that out, which Mark and I are working on. So yes.
That was my only question. Thanks.
Thank you, Vanessa.
So other question I have is, you want to discuss your personnel's changes, if that's an increase or what? My understanding is we approved this last year. We just haven't hired anybody. Is that right?
That's correct. I kept everything the same. We approved to hire a part-time person. Obviously, that wasn't feasible this year. So I am moving into 2021 with the same goal I set for myself of 2020 to try to restructure the Parks and Recreation Department by bringing in a part-time person to help with the senior center, having Mickey focus more solely on the senior center, having Allison work with me more solely on the parks so that we can run both sides of that more efficient.
Well, I'm going to say I'm going to struggle with adding headcount in 2021.
I understand. And as we, to Emily's credit, when we ran into the COVID emergency, we quickly diagnosed that we weren't going to bring another body in, and that's why it wasn't filled.
And it would only be done if it was feasible.
Yeah.
So this really isn't a new headcount, or what? I mean, obviously we have no person in and we're not paying for it, but this was something that was approved last year. So I think if and when things start opening up, then we have to just reevaluate the workload and make the decision then.
And I would always bring it back to the board. Yes, absolutely.
Give it a choice.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I don't know that there's another thing that you need to interject on, Emily, if you want to run away and I'm looking real quick. I don't think so. All right. Let's move on to another quick and easy one, maintenance department. Mr. Mark Schroeder is with us.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm asking for a couple people. One for sure if I can. Two if I can because of the paid on call. I'll have that sheet, the survey I've been taking from other communities next week. The board can look at that over, and then we'll go over it in October, or they call me anytime. That went up. That would eliminate summer help. What else? And yeah, and I'll give you all that report on that, and you can look at it and make your determination on that. Our operating supplies, that hasn't changed. The gas and oil, that hasn't changed. Our clothing went up. I think we need to buy the guys boots and pants because we get pretty dirty. I'm buying shirts and hoodies and hats and things like that. And it's just, I don't think it's enough. Their boots and their pants are getting worn out pretty bad. The cell phone, if we get two people, one person, that's going to go up. So we'll have to look at that later. The equipment maintenance, that's the same. The vehicle maintenance, that's the same. Miscellaneous, that is the same. Then we're down to, we need a new trailer. One of our trailers is like 12 to 15 years old. It's rusting through. It needs to be rewired. We need new brakes on it, breakaway box, and a battery box. So the cost of repairing all that's going to be pretty high, and kind of the rust spots are pretty bad towards the rear. It's getting kind of scary to put something up on it. Sickle bar would really help with the 500 miles of trails we have. Just doing it by hand with a weed whip or whatever we use. It's kind of hard. It takes a long time. It took us 5 people better than 3 days to clear up just a railroad trail. And the sickle bar would help in the back of the parks, the tree lines, things like that. And the price I put on there is basically over because the price increase could go up next year. So with any luck, it'd stay pretty close to the same, but I just wanted to put the increase there just in case it does go up $500 or $1,000 each piece.
Okay. We certainly have enough trailways to justify the sickle bar. Let me ask you this though, Mark, what the seasonal employees, obviously they do come in and we utilize them. We've cut down on some of the menial labor, if you will, that detract away from Jake, Chad, and yourself. But how would you justify using 2 additional people unless we're going to eliminate some things here? I guess I don't see that one.
Well, it's basically I've called about 10 or 12 places, and the paid on call is how the board and everybody wants to go about doing this paid on call. I know sometimes we're going to need 2 people to be on call.
Right.
I've got some scenarios that I've written up for the board to look at, and they can see what we'll be going through from after hours during a regular work day, and then the weekends also.
Okay.
So
I know, and I'll put the weight on Mr. Weber. I know Mr. Weber was talking with some people that had a tried and true, well-written plan that was going to be shared with us to help us through that task of paid on-call services. And you and I have already discussed the idea that there are just simply times, especially when you're out using chainsaws or power tools and things of that nature, you got to have 2 people for safety's sake.
Right.
Insurance really just screams the need for that. But other than that, I do believe that we're going to have some revenue sources available to us with the Michigan Airline Trail. The Adams Outdoor Advertising billboard sign will go up. That will be money that goes to the trail maintenance for Wixom and Commerce Township. So I don't have a problem with the equipment. I don't have a problem with the budget as it stands. I think the board's going to have to give a close scrutiny as to additional manpower, but I think that's going to be across the board with every department in 2021.
So Mark, are you a 5 days, you Monday through Friday generally, or is it a Monday through Thursday?
Monday through Thursday.
So are you looking, I mean, to be honest, most of your stuff is probably like the Richardson Center is probably a Monday through Friday thing. And then on call for a weekend, maybe if they get brought in or whatever, you can give them a day off during the next week. Is that what you're looking to do?
Well, I mean, we could do that, but the thing is, like during the winter, I have a sheet that I'm going to give to the board too of the hours I put in I think less than 3 months coming in, doing snow plowing, salting, taking care of sidewalks. I mean, during the winter is really a heavy time for us. We get 2 inches or less, under 2 inches, we have to take care of that. There's been times that the snowplow company couldn't make it. In fact, the library was going to shut down last year when we had 7 inches of snow, and that was on a weekend later in the afternoon. And she asked, she was going to shut it down, and we went over there and took care of everything and plowed it and salted.
So I guess I would ask to come up with some different plans, making sure that we certainly have covered, I think, at least Monday through Friday, but however you want to think best. And then the other piece is on your capital outlay. I realize it's low, but we seem to vacillate between 1 year spending 80,000 because we're buying trucks or whatever. And like the fire department put together a 10-year plan or whatever. So I don't know what you have and when you think things are coming, but it might be nice to have, at least in your back pocket, an idea on when these, and I don't consider a sickle a major thing, but when the major stuff is coming up. So all of a sudden we're not buying a dump truck and a pickup and something else all in one year. So, so I would ask that you start working on that to make sure that, you know, that we have available.
We had a plan before, but we're getting more out
Right.
of our vehicles now and everything. We're maintaining them regularly now, that better than we used to, than it was before. So we're getting more out of our equipment and vehicles now. So that plan is going to change. It used to be a 10-year plan. We can go 12 years or more with them now. So we're getting more out of it.
So one comment is if we do approve this budget, I agree with George, just because there's a line item that says we're hiring someone doesn't mean that we're going to actually do it. So as long as the good news is we're being recorded. So everyone hears, just because it's in the budget doesn't mean you get that person. It's
you still have to go through the request process.
It's just 7:50 p.m. on September 29th, so we can go back and play this recording.
All right.
Here, I'll write it down for you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it greatly.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let's jump on to information technology. And Ben Sobrowski is there.
Yes, I am. So, so this year, the largest expense that I'm looking to, that I'm asking for, it's a collaboration with the planning department. They'd really like to move towards all digital board packets, including their plans. And the way to make this feasible, we think, is to provide a laptop for each member to be able to access that. Now, if a particular member said, you know, I already have a laptop that I love, I just prefer to use that, that would certainly be fine with us. We'd obviously save the money on buying that unit for that particular person, but the idea would be to offer to each member, and in addition, the zoning board of appeals as well.
So Ben, can I just jump in to here? I struggle with, so I guess, well, let me ask a first question.
Sure.
Why a laptop versus a tablet?
Well, Dave and I discussed that, and it just seemed, as far as the looking at plans, it's just a little less cumbersome on a laptop versus a tablet. Dave, I don't know if you wanted to interject on that.
Yes, Mr. Weber, Ben's correct that we did discuss this a few times, and I guess it was ultimately my opinion that the capability of a laptop is more conducive to navigating through sets of plans and being able to zoom in and zoom out. It handles that better than a tablet in my experience.
So again, being 2021, this request, and I'll let Rick speak to the ZBA. Now that Mr. Jones, who is probably the least technical savvy, has stepped down from the Planning Commission, I'm not aware of anybody else that doesn't already have a laptop. And based on the restrictions I saw in the write-up, that this laptop would only be for township use, and they couldn't do anything else on it, which I think makes sense. I'm just not sure that, one, there is a demand, and Dave, you can jump in here for that, but two, I don't know that this would be the year to do that on the Planning Commission. So maybe the first question for you, Dave, is there in discussions you've had with other members on the commission, have they overwhelmingly said, yes, I want a laptop to be able to do this?
I haven't gone person by person and asked them, do you want this or not? I know it came up a little bit more informally at our last Planning Commission meeting, and I remember Mr. Perrell in particular saying, I'm going to opt out. I'm happy with my, whatever machine he's using. But we're certainly not going to buy them for anyone who doesn't want one. So I I'm happy to go through with every planning commission member and every ZBA member and ensure that this is something that they actually feel they need and would benefit from before we would make the expenditure.
So from a
Dave,
CPA standpoint, I don't know if I definitely don't want one. I want my paper packets because first of all, unlike the planning commission, the ZBA has to go out and see every single property. So when I go out there, I take my packet, I take my blueprints or whatever it is, layout, the survey, whatever, because I want to look at and measure and whatever, notes I want to take, whatever. I can't do that on a laptop. I have no ability to print paper other than 8.5 by 11 at home, which doesn't work for that. So you're still going to have to deliver something to me for every meeting. And I've been doing the PDF thing, for the township packets ever since we started, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, whatever, but I just don't see how it works for the ZBA. And never been on the planning commission, so I can't speak for the planning commission.
So
Bob,
how
you
many
wanna switch to the
ZBA meetings? How many ZBA meetings a year do you have?
We schedule them
Roughly
by
6.
Well,
maybe
they're scheduled
5 to
for
8,
6.
5 to 8, I would say. Is that a fair number, Dave? Between 5 and 8.
I was going to say less than that. I mean, we're scheduled for 6, and just recently we've canceled our last couple, so it might be 4 or 5.
So buying laptops for 4 or 5 meetings a year doesn't seem to make sense to me.
So do all these guys have iPads? Do they all working off a tablet?
No. So they were never issued iPads as some of the other boards were because there was such a heavy reliance on still paper board packets that we didn't want to go through the expense at that time.
We get blueprints
So
now.
when you're okay, yeah, I know, but iPads are pretty good nowadays. But my question is more of a cost. They're certainly, I believe, more than $600. I don't know. Ben, what do we get an iPad for?
I'd say between or around $700 for an iPad.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So Ben, would you have to download certain programs onto the laptops or the tablets to view the plans?
Dave, my understanding is that you pretty much use PDF for viewing that stuff, or
Yeah, I can't think of any specialized software that we would have to purchase in addition to the actual hardware. Ben's right that most of the time what they're looking at is PDFs and things that are pretty standard on the equipment as it comes.
Yeah, and so my idea was to not even provide the office suite because I just based on we would I would get them ready for them to use Adobe PDF Reader, which is a free application, and then my idea was to have like a training session, a special meeting training session where after Dave, Paul, and I would have worked through the process and then shown them, this could be your optimal workflow for reading plans, for looking at them efficiently and so forth. So that was my idea for them.
So if I can, let me jump in. So for Ben and Dave, since our meeting for Thursday has been canceled for this month, for November, if you want to send it to me in a PDF, I will try it. So at least I can see what it's like. But I just know for me, I like to just open up those blueprints and whatever. And same thing with the surveys when I'm at the property to see where, because unlike same planning commission, they don't have things marked. I like to see where things are marked and stuff in relations. I always take my cell phone. I take pictures too to help, when I go back, I ask questions and stuff. So, but I'll try one to see, but I'm pretty reluctant at this point.
And Rick, I'd be interested to hear your opinion on, because I'm assuming you'd take your iPad with you or.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. No, okay.
Not for the ZBA. I've never used it for the ZBA.
Well, I was just.
But you will now. You will now if you have the PDF.
If you got an electronic board packet, what would you do next or in November?
Yeah,
if you had to go
that's why I have to see what it's going to look like trying to use a site plan on a little screen as opposed to this great big piece of
Right.
paper.
And so I'm just saying, I'd be curious what your opinion would be if you took your iPad versus, you know, if
I'll
you
do
were
that.
able to get it to work. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely not going to use my cell phone. That's for sure.
Right.
So, and Dave Campbell, maybe so we have a meeting on Monday, and so I'm happy to lead the discussion with the planning commission members on. I prefer the electronic package for the planning commission, but I also use my tablet. But I can lead the discussion to say, look, do you, with the technology that each of you have presently, do you need a new device, or can you accept the electronic package on whatever you're using for the Zoom calls today?
Yeah, the intent here is not to unnecessarily buy new equipment for people who don't want it and aren't going to use it. And so the other hope, though, was if for those who do want it, and if we do decide to go ahead and purchase it, we do want to be consistent. So in other words, we don't want to buy a tablet for one and a laptop for another and a Samsung for one and an iPad for the other. We want there to be some consistency there with whatever route we want to go.
And Dave, does it cost money to print the blueprints for everybody? What's the cost for that?
We do our best to put that cost on the petitioner and have them deliver the plans to us. But that creates its own set of challenges as well with, people having to overnight things to us and us having to wait until the FedEx delivery comes before we can finish our job. And while I hear what Mr. Silva's saying, that he likes his old fashioned packets, and I can appreciate that, the moving eventually to an electronic format would certainly streamline our ability to put these packets together.
Right, seems more efficient.
I get a 24-inch screen.
I think you just
you can get a iPad Pro. I'll tell you that if I'm using just my iPad, I write on my notes. I've written on all the stuff here and it's on my iPad. And now I'm using my own laptop for the meeting. It's cumbersome going back and forth. Certainly in a live meeting, it's no big deal. I've got my iPad, I've got my notes and agenda and whatever. So I guess I can understand where Rick's issue of writing things down on there is an issue, I guess. So how do they do it? What are they using now? If they don't have anything electronic, they're using their personal computers for their Zoom meetings?
They are, which that also creates its own set of challenges. People using different formats, and somebody's in portrait and somebody's landscape because they're using an iPhone instead of a laptop. So again, that speaks to whatever route we go. I'd like there to be some consistency.
All right, Ben, is there anything else other than the planning department and the ZBA that have just been a burden for you to deal with today? Or
no, I just additional items in my memo. For the fire department, the major thing would be upgrading any computer equipment for the new station. Just discussing it with the chief and the captains. Just the idea for 3 PCs for their office areas and to add Wi-Fi access points to the building. Additionally, for the fire department, it's time to start a replacement plan for their Surface Pros that they have in their fire trucks, which the idea is to start replacing. I think we said that there's 8 or 9 of them, so 3 a year. And what I would do is the ones that we replace, we'd hold as a spare just in case something died on us in the meantime. But those are used pretty heavily in their trucks now. So it's important to keep those up to date.
So Ben, just on those, so you're saying that's or Ben or Chief, they've got a 3-year lifespan?
Well, when they were purchased, yeah, I would say that they were purchased with the 3-year warranty, and we did recently have one die on us, and it was deemed it would just be it would be more economical to replace it at that point because of they are difficult to repair and so forth. Because we try to protect them as much as possible, but because of their use, wear and tear, they go in and out of the trucks, whether at the station or if they're standing outside the truck to use it. So they do get a fair amount of wear and tear where, where a regular laptop just for regular use you might see 4 to 5 years of use out of it. I'd say, yeah, that the 3 years is probably what we need to look at for these.
And are these the ones originally that Precision Coating purchased?
So that I'm not aware of. I was not involved in the initial purchase of these. It was a project that I believe, I know Todd was heavily involved with it. And when they got them, I helped them set them up, but I do not know where the first round of them came from.
Okay. And then just, if you will, so your ancillary memo that you did for us, can you just touch on the Merge Live meeting in person expenditures, if you will?
Yes. So yeah, Mr. Scott asked me to just essentially as a placeholder because, I realize number one, that you all have not made a decision on what we're going to do when we're allowed to go back into live meeting mode in-person meetings. So what this shows us, I'm sorry, I thought I had it up. I must have accidentally closed it. There we go. Okay. So what this is actually sort of what I've been referring to as the worst case scenario because it's the most expensive. But this shows the township paying for the production of all of these meetings as a online production. So, live meeting on that streams on YouTube in person. And so the cost is $325 a meeting per what I received from Merge Live. Most of the meetings don't go over their allotted 3 hours, except for sometimes township board does. So we did project a couple of meetings that would go over. So that is that information, or that's why I provided that information. So there's a couple of scenarios. You all could decide once we go back to live in-person meetings that you don't want to do this, then the cost obviously is zero. The other scenario is you decide only to do township board and maybe planning commission or something like that. A couple of the meetings that are live in person and you want to present online. One of the issues is that the township board room would have to be slightly retrofitted, like adding a camera. There was, believe we discussed an additional cabling to the sound system, which is pretty much ready for it, but it would allow Merge to connect directly to the sound system and get the audio feeds that way. So DDA, for example, does not meet in that room. So it may not be possible to do live in-person meetings online if they're not meeting in that room. The same with the library board. So you may decide, well, that's okay. At this point, we don't have to do those meetings live and in person.
But this does capture the 72 meetings. If all panels, commissions, and boards were put through the Merge Live video system, 72 total meetings roughly for about just under $18,000 a year.
So, I did not include DDA and library in this because it was my understanding that DDA would pay for it out of their budget or their fund, and the same with the library. I know that, or you all discussed that recently, and so that's just what I was told. That's how it would be funded, but
Okay.
that's why DDA and library aren't on that list.
All right. Any
So
specific?
Dave, I don't have, well, personally, I don't think we need to do all meetings. That's my feeling. I think if we're going to consider to post the township board meeting, I think is certainly reasonable to do that. That's where I would say virtually most of the decisions are made there. Then we can discuss maybe planning and ZBA. That's up to that. That's my personal feeling. I have no trouble leaving a placeholder until we come to a decision, and you know, tentatively, if that's how we're doing it now, that's fine. I don't think Parks and Recreation needs to be transmitted live. The other thing I would want, honestly, Dave, is as we've had more and more meetings, is one, how many people outside the board and who need to be here have viewed it, but then two, what have been the viewing after the fact.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, you know, the newspaper, I'm sure, goes in and looks at it at a later time. I'm not sure if she's sitting on this or not, but because they get everything recorded, so there's no reason to be at the meeting type thing. So that's how I feel about it.
No, and I appreciate it, Bob. I do believe that there is a value in this service of publishing. I think the board will have to decide how broad you choose to do that. I hope that the board sees value in you know, videoing the meetings, and I think the top ones are certainly are important, but I think there's value in all of them. As far as the DDA and the library, I think that's an easy adjustment. You know, and I'm sure that Merge Live is happy to articulate what can and can't be done and how it can be done. He was very adept in all of our stuff. I'm just looking for a placeholder, and it's clearly a decision that you as a board will have to make. But I didn't want to have it left out and turn it into a budget amendment. I'd rather decrease than increase. So with that, I would just say that tentatively approve. And
did anyone have any other questions about the rest of the IT?
No, thank you, Ben. Oh, go ahead, Bob, if you were going to speak.
I did. I'm sorry, Ben. I guess it must be my thing tonight. But if you have a replacement plan as to how you're replacing stuff, just seems like every year we hear, well, I'm just going to replace a third of these computers or a third or whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but if you know that there's, I don't know, 5 in treasurers and you're replacing however that's being done, that would be nice to include in these conversations. That's all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, thank you. Let's jump into the planning department, please. So Mr. Campbell and the Campbell Academy there can do their thing.
The Campbell School for Wayward Boys.
Thanks, Ben.
Yep.
Go ahead, David.
My budget was not very different at all from previous budgets. I want to believe pretty straightforward. The one maybe more significant expense that I anticipate this year is having a consultant do a 5-year review of our master plan that we adopted in 2000. We worked on it in 2015. We adopted it in 2016. So we're due for a 5-year review. And my thought was to have Giffords Webster or a firm of their caliber go through our master plan and see what sort of recommendations they could make, whether we are due for an update or what sort of things might we be looking to update when we're due for a 10-year update in 2025. Other than that,
so is that 5,000 for that, Dave? A WAG, or did they give you a rough idea that's what it would cost? I mean, just the parks ones, when they do a 5-year plan, it's a heck of a lot more than 5,000. So that's why I'm curious.
Well, I don't intend for this to be a plan. We have a plan. My hope is the outcome of this is for them to say, looking at this from a 2021 perspective, looking at a 2015 plan from a 2021 perspective, here's what you will probably be wanting to do 5 years from now when you do an actual update of this plan.
Okay.
So I don't expect this to be an update. I expect this to be kind of a housekeeping review. And no, it wasn't a WAG. It was me talking with Giffords and coming up with this number as being a reasonable number for the service that I'm hoping to get from them.
Dave, I just have one question for you is, I know that you, 2 years ago now did a fantastic job with a student intern. I don't know the availability of interns or what, if it turned out to be a big burden for you and Paula, or an asset. I didn't know if you wanted to have a placeholder for an internship, or if there was value. I don't want to force it on you, but I wanted to make sure that if it's of value, that maybe we have a placeholder for you to attain one.
It's not something that I consider to be a high priority. And if part of what I heard discussed earlier today was avoiding an increase in headcount, then I could see this being a year where we don't need to go that route.
Okay. I will share with the board, if you will, in the next day or two, more for our October finalization, some comparables. And I don't mean to make this announcement just because it's planning division, but I've been able to capture some comparables for wages for departments, department heads, positions that I think will be of value to the board. I will forward those along, and then we can make any adjustments as necessary in a finalization of the budget. But other than that, obviously, I hate to give him so much credit. I think I told David the other day, he does a phenomenal job. He's phenomenal resources. I just wish he graduated from Michigan State.
Wow.
I disagree wholeheartedly.
What a send off for a budget conversation.
No, I would like to take this as tentatively approved, unless you have other specifics for David.
Nope.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you.
Oh, golly. How about requested election department? Melissa Creech, clerk extraordinaire.
That is literally a stab in the dark. That's a good estimate based on if we were to have one unplanned election, and that's
Okay.
my good guess.
No, I appreciate it. And I understand completely.
Hey, Missy, just a question for the replacing voting booths.
Yeah.
What is life expectancy of a voting booth?
Well, the ones I have are very old. Most of them are very old. I've had it in my budget for the past couple of years to order new, and I just haven't gotten around to doing it.
So, but with any new technologies or anything's coming, is the booth literally just the walls to separate, and we're not worried about any technology?
No, so the new ones I'm ordering do not have lighting in them. The old ones have light bars. Some of them have light bars. They're hard to maintain. I don't believe we keep fresh light bulbs. I could be wrong. I don't know if Mark's still on here. He does all the setup. I know the new booths that I have been able to purchase are a lot easier to set up. They're easier in the precincts. They're smaller. You can angle the way it's the privacy panel is facing to accommodate for social distancing. They're easier to transport. They're easier for the election inspectors to put away.
The ones
Does this 6,000 cover all of them?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
Is the 6,000 replacing all of them, or is this some of them?
The 6,000 gives me, hang on, I'm gonna do some quick math here. I'm not very good at
that. And while you do your math, I'm just gonna Mark keyed in here. Mark, do you have any trouble getting lights or parts or anything for some of the older ones, which I think are, if you remember, if you're walking through the Township Hall, Clerk Creech has an abundance of, I'll call them the old briefcases. They open up, the parts are self-contained, but they're pretty beat up and worn out.
Those aren't as bad as the ones before that. The other ones before that, we can't even get parts for it now.
Right.
Those now, and I think there's 20 to 30 of those sitting in the pavilion that we pieced together just to get enough voting booths out there. So I know she does need more. The ones that are in the hallway, not bad, but they're getting pretty old too. I don't know the age of them.
Do you have light bulbs or anything for those, or is that one of those things the parts just aren't available?
It's hard to get the parts. They're almost obsolete. I don't know how old those are, but you know, we have some that they were purchased a long time ago. So there's enough lighting in the buildings now when they vote that they really don't need them.
Yeah.
We don't plug them in, do we?
No.
I don't think I've ever seen one on. The 6,000 only gives me 30 voting booths. So that's 2 per precinct, which is actually 4 booths because they're dual voting booths. So that's 4 new ones per precinct.
Okay.
And I need.
And how many do you usually have? How many do you usually have on each one?
In each precinct?
Yeah.
Well, it really depends on the election and where I'm at, because some precincts I can set up 12 and some I can only set up 4.
Yeah, the area, the space, and then we use a lot of tables too, because there's not enough out there either. So we use the tabletops with dividers.
I guess my question is, how many do we have now, and how many is this replacing? Is this 20%, and you're going to do this once a year for 5 years and replace them, or what is it?
You know, I could give you a count of them. We had a count last year.
Ballpark.
I know I've asked you so many times, Mark, you think it would be in my head. I don't have that.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you there. It's so many numbers. I couldn't tell you exactly, Bob. Not even a ballpark, tell you the truth, but figure there's 6 right now per precinct, and an average we set up plus the tabletops. 15 precincts.
So that's 100.
Yeah.
So roughly that's 100, and this 6,000 is, what did you say it was?
30.
15? I don't remember. 30.
So it's a third of them.
Okay, so that's about 30%. So we could expect this then.
And I've already purchased, what, Mark, about 20 of these a few
Yeah.
years back?
Yep, 25.
So roughly the same amount for the next couple of years. Okay, that's all. Okay.
I shouldn't need to get any more than this, only because the amount of voters that are actually going into the precincts anymore is getting a lot smaller.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm not. I don't know. Okay.
Thank you. I'll tentatively approve that and set it off to the side and move on to I guess building and grounds maintenance, Township Hall buildings and grounds maintenance.
So my question right off the bat on the capital outlay for the sun barrier, for the atrium, LED lighting, painting of the township hall, how critical are those for 2021?
I would say you're looking at them in a way that would be not prioritized. I would tell you, if you're going to do a critical, what you got to do, connect to the sewer and do the sun barrier. Everything else is clearly a want, not a need. The LED lighting will reduce the operation costs of this building substantially. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get into the DTE format like we did with the wastewater treatment plant, where the LEDs lights were replaced predominantly at the cost of DTE. The painting of the township hall it's just one of those things that has been long overdue. If you remember in 2016, when I came in, the carpet had never been cleaned. The air ducts had never been cleaned. So just trying to get the building on a rotation of upgrades and maintenance. The sewer is a priority. The sun barrier for the atrium is going to take some work to do. I had some people come in and do estimates for blinds and things of that nature, but the building department and the planning department are unbearably bright to stand at the counter to try and talk to the patrons without us coming up with some type of a barrier down the atrium wall. Years ago in 2009, they put up some window tinting on the atrium windows on the south side of the building. It was insufficient, never worked. Eventually it failed miserably, and we cleaned up the windows that we could to remove it. But it does have to be taken care of. I do anticipate you'll be able to do it for around $10,000, as painful as that is. The sewer unequivocally has got to be done. We've run into many problems where we have to, if you will, probe and plunge, because there is a bow or a break, or not a break. There is a bow or a belly in the pipe between the building and the septic field. Though Jay is looking into the opportunity of us connecting to the 8585 PGA Drive, because their sewer line goes 300 feet out across under PGA Drive and into the field area over here. So it may be easier to connect to that line than going all the way down to Wincliffe Street, which would be the next step. But to prevent us from having a sewer backup or problem, especially when we're still currently housing all of our statutorily protected blueprints, ballots, records, and documents in the basement, that's a gotta be done. LED lighting, painting of the township hall, and the dumpster enclosure, all those things are wants. The dumpster closure only comes up again because we were told that we had the materials at the wastewater treatment plant that match the materials that our dumpster enclosure here is made of. We've just never commissioned someone to build it with the materials that we already possess.
So if we turn that capital outlay number from 131,170 to 38,170.
Yeah, I would just say if you made it a solid 40,000, that would include the dumpster enclosure, which would give you a place to store signs and collected items that today are very prominent in our pickup and cleanup of the township, so that they're protected, so people can come back and pick them up, and they're not an eyesore to the neighbors, because sometimes they stack them on the side of the neighborhood where the backyards are looking at it, as opposed to it being enclosed. So I would tell you clearly, if you just rounded it at 40,000, you would be doing a adequate.
You better make 42.
Yeah, I like that number.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Other than that, that's a pretty straightforward. So we'll tentatively approve that one.
So just one other question, Dave, just under the building and grounds maintenance. So in 2019, we spent 32,000. We budgeted 56,000. We're probably on track to spend 30,000 this year.
Yep.
Just the science behind the 56,000.
56,000 was really looking towards the idea of taking care of the grounds and bringing them up to a standard where they should be. I would say the number one complaint that Commerce Township receives is when people walk through the door to pay their taxes, and whether they're paying $20,000 in cash or $20 for a dog tag, the first thing they do is they go, "Why does the building look like crap outside?" They look like they're drought-based flower beds. They need to be cleaned up. A lot of our old trees need to be removed. We've done a lot to push back the dying trees and things to the south and east of the township hall that used to increase our maintenance costs, filling the roof and the vents with pine needles and things of that nature. So just really the dream maintenance of the facility as opposed to the actual money spent is the difference.
Get some volunteer groups to plant flowers.
I wish I could create a garden club to do it for us. I would contribute.
Sounds like a Boy Scout project.
I did try.
No. Not this one. I don't do them at my house.
Moving on to the other department requested budget, which is our SISMA Community Development Block Grant money, West Nile virus, Rails to Trails expenses. on that page, if you all would look to that. The two things that I would tell you to give a good focus to, one is our SISMA expenses. Currently, the SISMA is funded by all of the cities, village, and township participations. We essentially pay $500 towards the office supplies for Erica Cleets, the director of the SISMA, and her volunteer staff or internship staff. And then $2,500 goes towards expanding right-of-way or project treatment. I'll assume facts not in evidence, assuming the Oakland County Parks and Recreation millage passes, that expense will disappear and Oakland County Parks and Recreation will adopt and fund and pay for the SISMA. So for this year, I would tell you we still need to have our $3,000 to cover roadway expense treatments and office maintenance for the SISMA. The other that I would point out is we have listed as the Rails and Trails, which is the Michigan Airline Trail, budgeting $30,000 a year. Previously, we did it by 1/3, Wixom, Walled Lake, and Commerce, covering the cost of the trail manager, John Hensler, which is an amazing asset, and his insurance costs. Any maintenance costs or signage or things that we could potentially encounter. I would tell you currently Wixom and Commerce are still in an interlocal agreement. And Phil Atkinson is working on creating some interlocal agreement that would language that will allow us to continue. I do believe there's a value in us retaining membership there. One, it tells all those people that were donors to us, the Ralph Wilson Foundation or the Michael Levine Foundation, that we are good partners. We just don't take their money and run. And we do have projects that Commerce can benefit from those organizations still. So we should stay in a good faith relationship to do that. There is the potential that Milford will be joining the consortium because of the missing mile that's being created between Wixom and Milford. So there is a possibility that Milford would come on board and help with the expenses for John Hensler that Walled Lake was participating in.
Dave, what does John Hensler do now that the trail is completed?
Technically, the trail is not completed. We haven't had a ribbon cutting, and he is finalizing all of the final projects. The most recent are the bollards. All the bollard barriers. The next phase is going to be putting barriers and rocks on either side of them, boulders, essentially. There are a few other things. Mr. Campbell will, not to bring him back on the screen, but Mr. Campbell will tell you, we have not yet had a punch list approval of the bridge that said, we're done, it's yours. We're getting close to that point. But other than that, John does the organization between the multiple municipalities and organizations that come out to say, we want to have a fund run, we want to have a charity run, we want to do that. He coordinates it, approves, or brings it to the Trail Council, Manager Steve Brown and myself, to say, do we want this run on our trail? And he is the gatekeeper for that. He does a review of any problem when someone calls up and says, hey, the Detroit Institute of Art, someone vandalized it, tore it down. He goes out, does an assessment, gets it repaired, gets it up and running. So he does a lot of troubleshooting for us, as well as.
But you're saying it's a full-time job?
It is not full-time. It's not. He puts in a lot of hours, but it's a
$60,000 a year job, though.
Well, potentially it could have been $90,000 a year if all three of us put in $30,000 each year. We have decreased that exponentially. Actually, the last 2 years, we've been operating off of a fund balance from the Trailway. So we have not been contributing. We've just been operating off of the fund balance.
So what is he paid annually then?
I believe his pay is $30,000 a year with insurance above and beyond that. But we wanted to keep it a wider open opportunity because we didn't know what
Okay.
signage each community would buy. Right
So-
now,
so-
the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation has covered all of it.
So the 30,000, and maybe I misunderstood. So the $30,000 a year isn't just for John. That's everything.
It is everything. Any ancillary costs that we may encounter. And remember, this is the place where it comes back to the Adams Outdoor Digital Billboard. The $25,000 revenue that comes from that billboard goes to the Trailway. So a lot of this will be resolved with funding from the sign when it goes
Okay,
back up.
that was my question. I thought in reading the notes, I thought it was, we were paying him $30,000 a year.
No, 1/3 of that. Other than that, you know, they're pretty much the same. The drain maintenance, the Huron River watershed, the Ruse watershed, stormwater permits, Metro Act reviews, everything and anything are just the ancillary changes.
So the debt sinking fund, cemetery fund, road improvement. Okay. I thought at one time we were putting money each year into a trailway maintenance fund. And I know when we sold the library property, I don't know what it is. There was supposed to be a donation each year. I don't know how it worked out, but $200,000 was supposed to come from
Bruce Akins,
whatever the heck that is, from Aiken, that's it, into a trailway maintenance fund. So is all that there somewhere? I just don't see any of that annotated anywhere.
I
thought maybe that would come under.
I don't. The trail maintenance fund money that will come from Mr. Akins and the Akins project, I think, is covered under the DDA. It won't come necessarily. We have the ability, Commerce Township, to spend that money anywhere. We don't have to just use it on the 6+ miles in the DDA area. But the mentality of him making that donation to us was
right. But that property was not the DDA property; it was our property. So
right.
that library parcel
has not closed yet. We gave him an extension.
Okay, so we haven't seen that yet. All right.
Question on the youth assistance, $4,200. Can we possibly rename that to the Lakes Area Youth Assistance to eliminate any ambiguity with any other youth assistance organizations that are asking for money from us?
So noted.
Then we won't have anything for Vanessa to talk about when the subject comes up.
But I was wondering, do they need to bill you for that, or do you pay that at the end of October?
Actually, we just got the bill.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, got it.
I would appreciate the renaming. Thank you, Rick, for looking out.
You're welcome.
It's the Vanessa Youth Assistance Program.
There you go.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Do we know when or if we're going to get everybody out of the 8585 PGA Drive?
Great discussion. And I think it's better for a quarterly discussion for all of us, but essentially we have 2 tenants who are there on long-term contracts. We have 1 tenant who I've served in writing. He has stayed too long and he has to go. One of the tenants expired in April. I gave him permission to stay until the CPAs left. All of the CPAs left. He's been slow to remove his stuff and move his business. Last month, I gave him written notice. He's got to go. That's the Doug Brown agency. He's not a bad guy. He's a great guy, but they have to relocate. We have 2 other tenants that are long-term contracts. And if I could, I'd go in the work study session. I'll go into detail of what I think is best to deal with them. But as of right now,
what's long term mean, Dave? Is that
2023
2 more years or?
Yeah,
23. Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's going to average about $50,000 revenue in rent each year.
Okay. Well, I'm asking because in our miscellaneous account, the 895,956, obviously that has all of our COVID expenses for the plexiglass and the cleaning supplies and having each of the buildings deep cleaned when we first shut down and all of that. Yep. There's also $27,000 in summer property taxes on that building. And until it becomes vacant and becomes
Yes.
all ours, it's still taxable.
Correct. No, well pointed out. There's no getting around it. This is the perfect time to talk about it. The reality is those two remaining tenants, the only way we're going to get them out, their lease is solid. They do not have to leave. There's no ability for us to even move them around in the building so we could build around them, is to buy them out. And by doing so, we would then have a blank palette to do as we please and not be landlords anymore. I'm not a landlord, never wanted to be a landlord, but it's a burden. It's a burden to maintenance. We've had some problems with the low capacity of the building now, where we've had some problems with like we used to with the library. There's not enough fluid going through there to push everything 380 feet. So we've gone to some additional expenses that were unexpected. Not huge, $150 here, but the reality is we as a board have to make a decision. How fast do you want to be free of that? Both of those long terms are willing to look at and well educated on the idea of what it would take to make them go away. I can give you more details, but
Well, so if they're still here at December 31st, if they're not out by December 31st of this year, you might want to consider adding about $35,000 to the budget for the property taxes for next year.
Okay.
Because they're assessed as of December 31st of this year for next year. If they move out on January 1st, it doesn't count.
Okay.
So if they're still going to be there at the end of the year, we're going to have at least $35,000 in taxes next year.
I appreciate that discerning eye to that subject.
Can't hear you, Bob.
I'm glad you could see my mouth move, huh? That we have the general fund left, right? Let's do it and get out of here.
Yes, Thank you very much. So tentatively approved. Moving to the general fund. Jump in there. I
got a couple questions.
Please.
State shared revenue, I see 3.2, yet we've been talking back and forth. So I guess my question is, how confident are we that we're going to see that?
I got that off this state revenue share website. From
The state has given us in writing. The legislature has given it to writing to the Michigan Township Association. Your 2021 state revenue sharing continues. You're good.
Okay. And then my other question was cell tower rent. Is it just come at a certain time? I see originally budgeted 160 and we've gotten 71,000. Is it just because we haven't gotten the rest? Is that something that comes later, or how does that work?
I think we're missing a couple of cell tower payments, and I have to go back through the files. If I look at the history, it looks like we're missing a couple of them, and I'll have to contact those towers. I know we've gotten the Crown, but I don't know which ones we're missing. I'm going to sit Karen on that tomorrow.
And we do have, so you are aware, the log cabin tower, they're asking to renegotiate that because they want to add more antennas, and it's hard for them to go out, their statement, not mine. It's hard to go out and get more customers to attach to an antenna or tower that doesn't have a long-term commitment. So there is more money to be had there in a renegotiation, but that's on Phil's desk.
It looks like we get some cell tower rent in November and December. We'll get more. We got another 70,000, it looks like, last year.
Yep. And if you've noticed, they've been working, just because you mentioned cell towers, they've been working on the one down at 14 Mile in M5. Their annual maintenance after the chicks hatched and the birds have flown away, they've gone up, removed the osprey nest, and cleaning up the tower and making the additions as we had planned on that site.
Molly, back to page 1, the cable fees. Just what is the volatility in those from 630,000 in 2019 to something less than that by the time we end up this year to budgeting 550 next year?
Well, So most of the cable tower rent schemes they have a base rent that based on their agreement, it might go up every third year, or it might go up every year, or it goes up every fifth year. And then they have an additional rent for how many piggyback on dishes they have on there. So if they have carriers that are adding dishes, then our rent goes up. And if they have carriers that are taking dishes down and putting them someplace else, then our rent goes down. My concern right now is this is showing $450,000 worth of income, but 150 of that we accrued at the end of the year, so it has to come out. We've really only collected 300,000 for this year, so we're way lower than what we should be. And
So how did we settle on 550? What's the math behind that?
I didn't do it. I don't know.
George, I believe that comes from our permitting, where, if you will, a permit renewal or something, or new pole was $250. The federal government is moving 5G and everything to the FCC instead of being a state. They're reducing permit costs from $250 a pole down to $25 a pole. So there are some adjustments there that we have no control over.
So who owns the 550 number? Who?
You're talking about cable fees, right?
I'm talking about cable fees on page 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big number. I'm just trying to figure out who.
I threw that in there, and I don't know how I got it.
Janet, is that actually the WOCA money?
That's money we get from Comcast.
Yeah, it's West Oakland Cable Commission Authority is money that comes to us that we have, if you look on the same page, PEG fees that we as Commerce Township get to spend. And then there's WOCA, where I sit as the chairperson of WOCA with 5 communities, Highland, Milford, Walled Lake. And we have about a little over $500,000. And we use that money to fund the Walled Lake Consolidated Schools cable TV station and the Huron Valley Schools cable TV station.
Dave, this is money we get from AT&T also.
Right.
Cable.
Comcast and AT&T and
Franchise fees.
Franchise fees is not PEG money.
Okay. I'm just saying ours, where we have PEG money, it's generated through those same organizations, but the cable fees are franchise fees. And if another carrier were to come in, if Spectrum or WOW were to come in and put their own lines on poles and pay fees, then that would expand exponentially. The problem is 5G is putting a pizza box on every pole.
Oh, okay.
And it'll drop.
So the 464,000 activity to date, Molly, is roughly $100,000 off. That should really
50 over.
Yeah. So I think we should move it down to like 450.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we just need, what's the math behind the numbers? What's the formula that we develop that number from? Is it just looking at a prior year and then doing some kind of a swag?
Yeah, yes, basically.
Yep, very much so.
I mean, 19, we had 600 and whatever. We were hoping for 450. We were already at 464, so 550 would seem reasonable.
No, but we're not at 464.
Well, but that's the number that's in there. So if I was looking at it, that's what I would put. So I get that. So, but that number is closer to 300 or 350?
Our year-to-date is closer to 300 right now.
Right now, but we'll get more money in.
Okay.
But I think we're missing, like I said, I'm going to look into that. I think we're missing some payments from Michigan Bell and some of the stuff that comes in at the beginning of the year. I mean, we've got them coming in, but those are the ones we accrued. Obviously,
I have a file. Molly, I have a file and all that.
Okay.
So I think I agree with George. We ought to decrease the 550 to 450 just for planning purposes, and hopefully we get more, but.
Got it.
And Molly, I think, so Bob, your original question was on the state shared revenue, and that's what Janet said
Right.
came right off the report. The current property taxes, with the 3.158 that we're talking about there, that's,
Spot on.
okay.
That's right off the roll. I have a question. Should we be adding the additional CARES Act funding for the smart bus, additional 24,870? So instead of 17,832, it's going to be.
Yep.
We'll be getting that next year. What will the amount be, Molly? 20.
It was 27.4, was it?
Are we sure we're getting it?
It goes into
I
this
would say
contract
leave it
and
and we
pay
get
that
it, we
money
get
to
it.
people. Yes, 27,840.
So you're increasing it by 27 roughly, so it's going to go to 35 or whatever?
Right.
Okay.
So that'll be on the smart
Okay.
income and expense.
45 actually.
I had a question wondering why the rent for the building department is going down.
It's based on his.
Actually, I had that too.
It's based on, I'm sorry?
It's based on how much he pays a certain percent of what he makes that month in rent.
Like permit fees. So if he has a lot of permit fees, we get more money. If he has lower permit fees, we get less money.
Thought I remember his budget that showed more, the rent or the permit fees was going to be higher this year.
I don't think so.
Or maybe I'm not thinking correctly. Okay, I'm just wondering because they have that extra fund balance, and if I don't know if that's a correct number, but just to make sure we actually are breaking even with that.
I'm working on something. We're trying to work something out.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the other question I had, wasn't on revenue. Are we going in order, or can I just
jump all over?
Okay.
Whatever you do, knock
it was
it out.
on the miscellaneous section. I should have wrote down. So it's the last page, 13 of 13.
13 of 13. Well, wait a second. You're not just going out of order. You're going like way out of order.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
Are we?
Sorry. So I was just wondering because it's the other department under miscellaneous.
Yes.
Just curious what the $57,000 was spent on this year.
CARES, that's where anything we got for COVID related, I paid out of there.
Okay.
It was all in one spot, so we know where to get reimbursed.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure we didn't need to budget anything.
And then there wasn't the taxes on
PGA. This is the page we just discussed before we jumped into the general fund.
Right.
Yeah.
This last page was what we discussed before we jumped into general fund, so we've already been over.
Yep.
But the 57 also has the PGA drive, so we need to increase the budget from 5,000 to 40,000 to cover next year's PGA drive taxes.
Yep.
And then the ordinance officer, just wondering how we came up with that salary amount.
What page is it, Vanessa?
I just wrote it on my notes here.
Page 9.
Page 9.
Thank you.
That's based on, I think it's based on $25 an hour.
Okay. Is that, are we going to find somebody?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we discussed it before. You guys had put it in the budget, and you guys will discuss it and figure out next year.
Right.
I was just curious how that number came up. It was very specific, so just curious on how it came about.
It clearly was an analysis of what Jay charges.
Okay.
Versus what locally needs to be paid to get a quality individual.
Right.
And I will have a couple of candidates for you as a board to look at that are both retired police officers, quality people with capable, very capable people.
So if we go, so I think we're finished page 1.
Yep.
Finished page 2, I think.
So one question on
I have a
2.
couple of things.
Okay.
On page 2, to transfer in 55,000. What is
That
that?
came in from the budget stabilization fund because it was overfunded, and we had to bring the money back into the general fund to be in compliance with the law.
Okay.
I thought that was like 100. I must have been wrong. I remember it being on as a board discussion.
Yeah, I remember that too. Okay.
And I think the interest income and dividends needs to be dropped dramatically because we're back down to the 0.05.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, less than 0.5% for a lot of our funds. And I can't even find a CD that pays more than 0.5% right now. So, and obviously if we're building a fire station and all kinds of other things, we are not going to have as much money in the fund. So I would be more comfortable if we drop that down to $60,000 or $70,000.
Take your counsel on that.
Oh, a few years ago when we were.
You want 60 or 70?
Be conservative.
Agreed.
60. Okay.
60.
I put it at 60.
Okay.
I mean, in 2015, we only made 64. We only made 29,000 in 2016 and 60 in 2017. So I'd be comfortable with it at 60.
Janet, how about under 676, the miscellaneous revenues, where we budget 5,000, but it's what obviously it seems like it's an uncontrollable. Where do those come from? Is there any rhyme or reason?
The 5,000.
Well, we've so in 2019 we had 11,800. 2020 so far we've got 35,000. Where do miscellaneous? My question is, where do miscellaneous revenues come from? What's the source?
That has the 32,681 in it that we have to give back.
That's right. Yes.
The state of Michigan
Give back
gave us
to who?
money.
We just
State of Michigan.
money we got from the state of Michigan, just put it in there because we knew we were going to have to pay it back, so we just put it in.
Okay.
So really there's 3,000 there.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And then obviously reimbursements, the volatility in that is the COVID reimbursements. That's the 52,000 so far.
Yep.
Got it. So anything else? Anybody have anything else on page 2?
Nope.
So page 3, Dave, do you want to take us through the logic on not giving yourself a pay cut last year, but giving yourself a pay cut next year?
Actually, this, I appreciate it. The reality here is, and I'll revisit a topic that I mentioned before, and I think it was before you, George. I do believe that this is an opportunity for us, and I don't know if you want to call it gender bias, you want to do it the way we always did it. I believe Molly, Missy, and I should all be paid the same. We all do very different jobs. I can't guarantee that, you know, someone is going to be as astute as Molly, as capable as Missy, and as eager to do great things as I am. But I do believe that we need to standardize the pay for the 3 full-time electeds. And when I did my research, I had no idea. So the mentality is by state law, you can't reduce my pay. So I can reduce my pay effective November 21st and put it on an even playing field where everybody is at the same. But following discussions where I've been going over potential comparables for our department heads and things of that nature, as opposed to me going down a level, I do believe Molly and Missy's pay should come up which will give us some flexibility for our if you will, our subject matter experts and quality employees, department heads, to be paid appropriately within a pay scale which is comparable to comparable communities around us. So I just, as a placeholder, asked that Janet throw wages for the supervisor at 91.8. I never was a person who took healthcare coverage through the township. I don't know that whoever fills my vacancy will be in the same scenario. And I don't know, other than I'm just throwing it out there as a conversation piece, that I do believe all three of us should be the same. Independence Township does this, Milford Township does this, where all three full-time electeds are paid the same. I could not even imagine trying to find 13 cents out of $2 million like Molly does every day. I could not imagine having the stress and strain of running a historic election as Clerk Creech has done more than once. Every time that, since 2016, they have been phenomenal, whether they're complicated by a stupid supervisor causing a write-in candidacy or just history. I do believe that you folks need to come up with what that is. I believe that, somewhere in the 91 to 95,000 range is a comparable for communities our size. And I think that it makes a statement publicly that defeats gender bias or anything, that we're all doing very difficult jobs and there's no reason for them to be different in pay.
So that's one opinion. I would disagree, and it's got nothing to do with gender bias because that's an election issue. It's got nothing to do with that. I do believe the supervisor, and it's not to disparage anyone. I absolutely agree with everything you said on the quality of the work they've done, but I also think the supervisor runs drastically or supervises drastically different environment throughout the rest of the township. So whether it be planning and supervising, all the other things that do not fall specifically under treasurer or clerk, and whether that's, so I would be interested to see what your comparables are, not from a dollar point of view, but to see whether supervisors, the same as a mayor over a council, gets paid usually more than what council members get paid in the different cities. I would think that a supervisor would generate more. That's my opinion, but
no, I appreciate it. I mean,
from a placeholder, I would say if you're not looking to give yourself a pay increase, just leave it at the 94. But and that's fine. We can have that discussion because we have to approve those, and I assume we'll do that at the October meeting. So
yes, sir.
I agree. The supervisor has the most responsibility in the township and should be compensated accordingly.
I disagree, but I understand. I appreciate your input. As far as that's the rationale. Like I said, I never took healthcare. I have healthcare as a retiree. I didn't need healthcare.
If you don't take healthcare, you get a stipend. What is the amount?
$3,000.
What is it?
3,000.
Okay.
As far as education, I do believe you need to keep the funding in there. Obviously, the Michigan Township Association education program has been not what it once was, but you certainly are going to want to, as trustees and board members, to participate when COVID allows it, and the next supervisor certainly is going to want to do so. I've already got some books ready for that person that the MTA provides so that he or she will have those documents ready to go immediately.
Dave, is the auto allowance, is that the 56 cents a mile or 59 cents a mile?
No, we get the full times are just given a flat rate fee per month, which probably works for Molly and Missy. I think I probably would exceed that exponentially if I either used a township vehicle or I applied for mileage. I just left it as is. I typically drive every street in this township 3 times a week.
So for budgeting purposes, I would go back to Bob's comment. I would take the 94 or the 91 to the 94 as a placeholder, and then we can have, based on what you bring, Dave, we can have further discussion in the October meeting.
And just a word of advice, Dave, you don't travel Union Lake Road for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Wait till July of 2021.
It's only 2 weeks, you're lucky.
Union Lake Road will be closed for 2 months.
Yeah,
Okay,
no
moving
kidding.
to page 4.
Got
Does
it.
anybody have any questions or on page
I will tell you, and again, I'll have a comparable for you to analyze when it comes to salary for finance and human resources. You're woefully short. There is nobody that does both HR and finance. So Mrs. Bushy is woefully short, and I will have a recommendation with supporting documents to increase that. I would think that however you want to see it.
Is the election different? Is this Department 191 different than the fund that we did election stuff?
No. Oh, no. It's the same.
Okay, because it looked, well, I thought it looked like different numbers, but that's fine. So that's the same thing. It's just in this.
Yeah,
okay.
just in with the whole general fund. I just want to let everybody know, I got news this afternoon that our healthcare decreased 21.52%.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So I have to refigure all these figures because I added 20%.
And we're probably, if you haven't already gotten the letter, we're probably getting a refund too from the prior year too.
I heard that, yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay,
Other than supplies, vision, and things of that nature under finance, human resources.
Dental, vision, and everything else are staying the same. They're not going up, they're staying the same.
So moving on to page 5.
Yep. Assessing is still a subcontracted source. Township attorney is still the same.
Yeah, and I would just on the township attorney, Dave, and I know you've been diligent to it. As we get into 2021, we just need to understand every time we pick a phone call up, anytime it's over 6 minutes, I think the cash register rings. So
I would say the biggest change that you're going to see in the attorney fees comes under the category of prosecutions. The district courts have placed some real conditions on township attorneys to clear cases, clear dockets, get things taken care of. It's making our attorneys do a lot more work, and we're not getting, not that we need revenue or supply, rely on revenue, but we're not seeing the revenue from tickets being paid. One, under the COVID, the sheriff's department had a no contact order. If you don't have to be involved, don't have contact with people, we don't want you being sick. So for 3 months, it's zeroed out. But in that 3-month period, Mr. Goldman has been challenged by the court to clear case, clear case, clear case, and clear case. So he's putting in a lot of time, and we're not seeing that break even number. We used to see $9,000 to $11,000 revenue from the court, $9,000 to $11,000 or $9,000 in prosecution fees. Now it's like we're spending $9,000 in prosecution fees, only seeing $5,000 revenue. So I've had a meeting with the courts to say we have to have some equitable changes in how they handle their caseload. I understand we want to clear cases, but that's going to be a change that you'll see. And all of us should, just as George said, be cognizant of that. And that specifically translates to holding the lieutenant for the substation to manage her staff to not pick up the phone and call them erroneously because they want to go fishing. We got to maintain that.
So
okay, Dave, with that said about the fines and forfeitures dropping, does that mean we need to readdress on page 1 the fines
Yeah.
and forfeitures line
That's-
item, because it's at $145,000 and we've only got 56,000 year to date. And you're right. Last year we were getting $11,000 or $12,000 a month, and this year we got 9,000 a couple of times, but we're getting, you know, $4,000 or $5,000. So should that be dropped down?
I would say if you rounded it down to 90,000 would probably be much more accurate, not knowing how long the COVID restrictions. No court is completely open yet. And I don't anticipate our courts being any different in the near future. So if you were to put it down closer to 90,000, I think you would be much closer to being accurate.
Okay. Good piece of information. So anything else on page 5, clerks items?
The only changes in my salaries because I'm losing one employee that's a higher paid and she doesn't take insurance, and the new person, this is based on the new person accepting township insurance.
Gotcha.
Has that decision been made yet, or you're still in the middle of that?
I'm still accepting applications, resumes.
Okay.
You've seen the IT translation.
So on page 6 then?
Yes.
Pretty much already gone through this.
Yep.
Yep.
Page 7.
Board of Review, there's really no changes. That's a team of appointees that work 5 days out of the year to support assessing. And then the treasurer's office to follow.
But Molly, the only question I had on treasurers was supplies. So it seems like we budget very high numbers that we never get close to spending towards. Should we carry that high a number?
I think next year we're going to need envelopes. In particular, we're going to need all of our window envelopes, and we thought we were going to need them this year, but we did not. And I think the other thing for this year, I'd have to go back in and check because those might be.
I will say Molly's been uber conservative and been using up Sue Gross envelopes by putting stickers over and doing things of that nature. So there's an awful lot of letterhead, if you will, documents that she's repurposing and using up.
Okay.
Page 8, is that where we are?
Page 8.
Yes. You've seen building grounds and maintenance, township hall general services. We'll make.
So what's the general services that's got salary? I'm confused what that is.
That's our 2 floaters. Floating.
Oh, okay.
They don't have a.
All right. I just wasn't sure when I saw township halls. I didn't know what that was. Okay.
So I've got a question on building and grounds, and it's not just here, but it's in others. We tend to. It appears as though we budget very high for electric, heating, well, specifically for electric, and we don't get close to spending.
We had a big credit this year for electric. So we haven't been.
So, okay, but if I look in 2019, we budgeted, or we spent $10,000. We then budgeted 71. This year, even with the credit, it's 12. So is 50. If we had a full year number of 10,000 in 2019, how do we get to it? You know, understanding 2020 might be different with people not in some of our buildings, et cetera, but is 50,000 really a realistic number?
Well, this is for PGA Drive also. So I'm not sure.
And as those tenants go out, they're not paying their own rent anymore. We have, if their own electricity, we have to pay it.
Gotcha. Okay. Then good to be
certainly a
conservative
place that
on that.
deserves some attention in the future, but I think it'll be more manageable.
So since we're talking about that, the water sewer fees, we have 5,000. If we hook to the sewer, that's all of a sudden going to jump up to whatever our water usage is, correct?
Yes.
So is that an accurate I mean, I don't even know how to, I mean, we could project it, I suppose, by looking at what we use in water, although I don't see that anywhere. So I don't know what the combo is. So is that 5,000 taking into account that we may hook up to the sewer
Not at all.
or not?
No.
Okay. So we would expect that to go up probably a third or a half, so maybe $7,500.
I would
I don't
think
even know
so.
how accurate that is. Okay.
So you want to increase it 7,500 or you want to make it 7,500?
Make it
I want to
7,500.
make it 7,500.
Right.
Seems like we're nickel and diming this thing, but
Yeah.
Not
of
at
course
all.
the capital outlay, I think we agreed to 40, whatever it was, 43 or something.
42,000, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, whatever it was. Okay.
Page 9, if you look at that, especially the ordinance enforcement, you know, essentially that's the price of an ordinance enforcement officer. And I would say that your 2 floating employees would be the support staff that would take care of any additional customer service, telephone contact, paperwork to support code enforcement would be removed from the building department and moved over to Cheryl and Tammy as our floaters, which will free up the building department to do building work. And you know, it's like, I wish we had a billboard today to say, and this is for, you know, the clerk staff. The ballots were mailed yesterday. They're coming to your door. I'm telling you, the clerk staff answered that question 300 times easily today. Same thing. So,
Hey, Dave, on ordinance,
yes, sir.
what are you doing for a vehicle? Do we have one?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a vehicle that is more than suitable for them to utilize for 2021, maybe 2020.
Has it been
It's
running
not
in
big and red
2020?
with lights on it, is it?
Yes, it has been.
Is it what?
It's not big and red and with a ladder and lights on it?
No, it is not.
Yeah, right.
No, it'll be either an Explorer, an Eclipse, or a pickup truck.
Okay.
So, question on insurance. So we spent 42,000, 43,000 in 19. We budgeted 77,000 this year. Looks like we're on track to spend closer to 45. Why 80 for next year?
I think PGA Drive.
PGA Drive.
Yeah. Our total, I mean, just for the sake of discussion, our total insurance cost for all facilities, pump stations, fire trucks, cars, land and marine, every category you have, $176,000+. We just renewed the policy. It's all been updated. The agent went door to door with Mark, with me, with everyone to get this all fine-tuned, and everything is covered properly. Horse farm, Byers farm, township hall, everything, with the clause of terrorist insurance. So if something happens, the federal government deems it to be terrorism, we're insured. The reality is that that bill is $176,000 some dollars annually. I tried to get my old badge number of 172. It wouldn't work.
Page 10.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on planning or the
Planning, we already did.
The only question, it's not really a question, I knew I had it somewhere, is have we ever gotten a report from the, I'm not sure it's how valid it is, but from the bus folks, from the People Express saying, yeah, something that we were evaluating. I mean, we're putting more money into it, and I realize some of that's coming back from SMART and whatever, but we also said we were going to evaluate it. Now I realize this has been a little different year, but have we gotten anything from them?
Yeah, no, Emily gets the numbers every month. We do, or, you know, so we do know what the numbers are. It was startling and shocking to the Village of Wolverine Lake. They're around $10,000 when they thought they were going to be around $800. We have done some restrictions where we've banned a few people. Just for the sake of discussion, we had a person that was getting dropped off in Commerce every day, and then she was using it. She's not a Commerce resident. You're banned. You can't use the service. Things like that. I will tell you unequivocally, I'll beat George to the comment. We are going, now that we have true numbers to deal with, and they are deflated because of COVID, we as a board are going to have to make a decision on how far do we want this to go. Right now, for us to pay $50 for you to go to the grocery store and back is pretty pricey. It might be time for us to analyze and look at Uber credits or something of that nature. There's Emily. But we are getting good numbers for ridership. We have a much more fine-tuned knowledge of who our riders really are, as opposed to 300 people that were in the books before that had moved to Florida. But we were still carrying them on the books with White Lake's program. People's Express has
Okay,
done
I'm just looking to get a summary, Dave. That's all. Okay.
Okay. So Emily, since you came online, what is our ridership monthly, real quick, roughly?
Give me a second. I got to pull it up.
Yeah.
Just do you include it in your monthly stuff? Am I just missing it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll pay more attention.
Okay.
Okay, then don't worry about it.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Page 11.
I am page 11. We've seen the maintenance department and everything there. Street lighting is the only other.
I'd like to change street lighting to 18,800.
How'd you come up with that weird number?
Just based on what we're paying a month,
All right.
adding 3 more months.
I will throw it out there for all of us to be aware of as we're coming into the holiday season. You're going to see Merrill Park want to do a much bigger and fancier tree display, things of that nature, when it comes down to the DDA or anything of that nature. If you find a place, let's say it's the Richardson Center, where you want to be able to decorate and do more, I think it's $11 a month to add a 110 plug to a street light. So if you want to decorate all the burning bushes in front of the Richardson Center, it can be done, and we can add a power source for a flat rate fee 12 months of the year to show decorations 1 month out of the year, things like that.
So I'm trying to find it. Molly, you had on your sheet that I can't find where it was, under salaries and wages, where you were providing a larger increase to one of your employees.
Yep.
Where was that?
I gave Karen an extra
On her
$1,000.
treasurer stuff.
Yeah, it should be on that sheet that I gave.
Are we
Was it
going
in a
over
different-
that sheet now?
Is that in a different file?
It's under the non-union.
Oh, okay. So that's one we have. Is that the only one we haven't talked to yet?
Yes.
Other than page 13.
Page 13, we've already done that.
Page
Yeah.
12.
Page 13, we've already done.
Okay.
And you were going to get us more information on the other salaries because
Yes.
we have different additional stuff to talk about, so.
Right.
Okay.
So let me ask you that before we get too far along, because we are coming to the end here. Who else do you want comparables for? I've got the planning director, finance, HR, technology.
I would say all of your director level positions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Parks and Rec.
Fire, library,
Right.
Parks and Rec, planning,
Right.
IT, finance.
I have the vast majority of them. I'll finish it out.
Okay.
Are we discussing the rest of these right now, or are we taking these to a different night?
Different night.
Let's take salaries all at one time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had a slight change, but we'll talk about that at another night.
So do we have any more meetings planned?
We didn't schedule any other meetings for this for other than September.
So what's your
No, we have
suggestion?
the next meeting we have is our township meeting, correct? In whenever that is, 2 weeks, I think.
13th.
And whatever it is. So that's the next one is our normal township board meeting. We have no other budget meetings.
Yeah.
We don't really need them. We've been through the budget.
There's only one
Oh, I
we
have
haven't
a
done yet.
question.
It's Fund
Well-
245, Improvement Building.
Yes. But that'll be available, should be available for the next board meeting. The reason that's not done is because I don't have the garbage numbers because we take demolitions and certificates of occupancy through September 30th. And then I have 171 pages worth of printout to reconcile from one year to the next.
So when are you looking to pass the budget, Dave? In November, October?
If we could do it either at the quarterly discussion meeting, finalize that topic. Otherwise, maybe at the next board meeting.
Well, but we don't have, we can't do it for the next board meeting. We need one more meeting before we do it.
Why?
We haven't
I do need
discussed.
to know what I'm putting on the L4029s. Like, am I maxing out the voted library and open space to what their Headley maximum is and keeping everything else the same with the 0.3 to library, 0.3 to police, and 1.41 to the township?
Yes.
Because those have to go to
Yes.
Oakland County tomorrow.
Yes.
Those are
Yes.
the same.
Okay.
Yep. What do you think, Rick? I mean, I like I said, I believe once you look at these numbers, you'll be able to, as comparables, you know, getting you in advance, you'll be able to look at them and come up with a consensus of what you want.
So are you saying, so you'll get us the numbers and you want us to do the salary numbers, you know, the elected officials, the non-elected, everything, and the budget all in October without a meeting all at the same time?
Yeah,
I mean, we can try it. If it doesn't happen, I guess we'll have to do it for another meeting.
I agree. I agree. The worst case scenario is in the quarterly meeting, we finalize.
Do we publish for a public hearing then for the October meeting for the budget? Doesn't mean we have to approve it that day.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Molly, how does a person who's been married for 42 years only be 39 years old? I don't get this math.
Well, it's actually our dating anniversary, but
Yeah,
married
she's
for
been
40.
married
Wait a
40.
second. You do a dating anniversary?
We do that one instead of
Please.
the married anniversary.
Right. You can
Oh
have
my
this
God. That's a
conversation by
chick
cell
thing.
phone on the way
It's an
home.
accounting. It's an accounting thing, George.
Motion to adjourn.
And I
Like
will
first
second
it's
that
like
motion.
LIFO and FIFO or something like that.
Roll call vote.
Burkheiser,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Hi.
Weber,
Aye.
Magner,
Hi.
Oval.
Just to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye. Thank you all. Congratulations, Molly, on your weirdo
Molly, have a good day.
meeting. George, if you need anything, obviously it's a great headboard that you're leaning against. Let us know.